has helped boost the growth and the prosperity in both the countries. The ultimate objective of this gathering, this event, ladies and gentlemen, to enhance the awareness regarding the economic opportunities among the stakeholders on both sides, that is Sri Lanka and India, and bring them together with the ultimate aim of encouraging the mutually beneficial cooperation between the business and industry in both countries. So, ladies and gentlemen, once again, would like to welcome all of you gracing this occasion, especially the Deputy High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Mr. Vinod Jacob, gracing the occasion. Welcome, sir, and all the other dignitaries as well. We are expecting the arrival of so much of other dignitaries, ladies and gentlemen, starting with the Honorable Minister of Trade, His Excellency the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, the Chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, plus many more dignitaries to grace the occasion. To start the proceedings, we would like to invite the Chairman of the Council of Startups of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Prajit Balasubramaniam to talk about the Sri Lankan startup ecosystem. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Prajit Balasubramaniam.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mr. Vinod Jacob, Deputy High Commissioner, Chairman, Ceylon Chamber, Mr. Vishgovind Sami, distinguished guests, CIA delegates, a warm welcome from the Council of Startups, which is also part of the Chamber of Commerce. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about the startup ecosystem in Sri Lanka. So the Council of Startups was created almost a year ago with the objective of being able to accelerate startups in Sri Lanka. So the idea was to look at problems that startups had in Sri Lanka and try and see in terms of resources, in terms of go-to-market, in terms of funding, and looking at the various ways of accelerating growth for startups. And that was the sole objective of the Council. I'm glad to say it's been 1 year and 3 months, and we've managed to get some of the startups out there. In fact, we also managed to do an exit with one of the startups out in the region. So it's been so far so good, let me put it that way. So I'm here to talk about the Sri Lankan startup ecosystem and why invest in Sri Lanka. So there are several reasons why one should look at the Sri Lankan startups. To begin with, I would talk about the tech talent in Sri Lanka. So Sri Lanka has a very strong tech talent, especially computer science graduates. We have them in small numbers, but world-class. So a few years ago, I mean just after the war in 2009, when we embarked on this journey in terms of investing in startups and looking at the angel investments, seed capital and venture capital space, my partner at that time, who was the MD of Google, told me that there was one university in Sri Lanka who was actually bringing out some graduates, and they were basically, Google had a program called the Google Summer of Codes, and we were in the top 5 of the number of invitees coming to the Google Summer of Codes. So over and above that, so that was the start of our journey in terms of investing in tech, because we knew that there was solid talent coming out of Sri Lanka. We had also companies that are competing with global giants, such as WSO2, using open source to take the giants in middleware. Then we have Millennium IT powering the largest stock exchanges in the world today. Millennium IT as well basically sold out about 15 years ago. And again, lack of resources, and as a result, it moved to LSC, and today LSC has taken them places. Another reason is the strategic location. We have almost 8 trillion in terms of an economy that we can capture within a 5-hour flying time from Sri Lanka. So geopolitically, we are well placed, with Southeast Asia, GCC, and India around the corner. So there are several companies, especially B2B companies, that we try to take out from Sri Lanka. With the current situation, a lot of people have been talking about brain drain, but I think we've also had a bit of brain gain. I mean, ratio might not be there, as I said, so the quality has always been there. 60% of my portfolio is people who have come back to Sri Lanka and who have started companies here. So these young kids have had, they've been educated outside, have a world vision, a world view, and they've come back to set up companies. And today they are regionally set up. So we look at countries like India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and Southeast Asia to look at the regional growth for these companies. And look, we have our fair share of problems, but with problems comes solutions as well. And with solutions, there are always opportunities. And that's what we capture here today in terms of looking at opportunities from an investor perspective. It's an ideal test market. My partners in India always say, the valuations are much cheaper, the ticket sizes are much lower, so, we don't mind coming and putting some money in here and testing the markets because the talent is great. So, hence we embarked on this journey with the angel investments, the venture capital, and it's been about 12 years, had immense support from the Indian Angel Network. And going forward, I think government is also aligned with the initiatives, with the 5 tech parks, the investments that are put in, and looking at island connectivity and the infrastructure development, which is in line with increasing it to 5 billion in terms of the revenue that's going to come into the country, hopefully, in the next 2 to 3 years. The workforce, the tech talent will grow because that's, again, the focus for the government. I suppose looking at our revenue coming in terms of 100% FDI, there are only 2 things that, in my mind, would make a difference is tourism and technology exports, because both will actually bring in 100% revenue into the country, with tourism having a little bit of imports. So another reason why Sri Lanka, despite the stagnant growth, we have good human capital, a robust capital market. I mean, we've had a fair share of ups and downs with the capital markets. Obviously, liquidity is going to matter in the next few months. I won't talk much about the BOI because my friend Prasanjit will probably talk about it more than me later on during the day. So the digitization process in Sri Lanka has been growing very fast. I've been talking to the ICTA chairman, and he basically confirms that before the end of this year, they'll probably have every citizen using an internet or having access to the internet, right? So internet penetration today is 47%, but the idea is to have every person on the net. Again, social media usage is quite high compared to the region. Strong mobile penetration at 145%. And if you look at the industries that we have been focusing, and I think it's also in line with the government's focus. So you look at logistics, again, last mile, edtech, health tech, retail, fintech, and agri-tech are some of the areas that we've all been focusing on. And there are a few good startups that are being groomed from here as a startup or as a test market. And we are moving them towards India, Bangladesh, and a few other countries in South Asia, right, to ensure because the market is very small here. So we don't actually focus on the market here, but we actually do a good test market here, try the product out, and then with our Indian counterparts, my partners sit in India, so with the counterparts from India, we try and do the POCs for both sides, and then bring it out to South Asia. So this gives a good understanding of where we are compared to the region in terms of the nascent part of it, in terms of, so we have all these good things in terms of digitization, good tech, talent, and, the infrastructure. We are number 1, probably from a digital nomads perspective, we were voted number 1. And it's very conducive from a lifestyle perspective. And a lot of the tech entrepreneurs like to be here in Sri Lanka on a beach coding and, and probably get a better vision in terms of what they want to do. So when you look at this chart, you can see what the problem is. It's to do with investments. So if you compare Most countries have 0.5% of the GDP, whereas we don't even touch 0.01% of the GDP. So I've just given a flavor of the ecosystem here, the enablers, industry, investors, and events. So the Lankan Angel Network was started along in partnership with the Indian Angel Network. The Indian Angel Network actually helped us mold the Angel Network in Sri Lanka. This was in 2012. And since then, they have invested close to about $1 billion plus rupees into the Sri Lankan ecosystem. And then we have companies like BOV Capital and Digital Innovation Fund, which is my company, which has done over, I think about close to right now $15 million in terms of investment in Sri Lanka. But that alone is not enough. If you look at the required funding, you're looking at this line over here, as opposed to the actual funding over here. We require about $400 million in terms of funding, and we haven't been getting that. And that's one of the reasons that we haven't grown in terms of the startups haven't grown. And some of the ones who have escaped this part of the world and gone into the Silicon Valley or Singapore have got funded and grown bigger, right? Just a flavor of how many startups are there, the ticket size, the stage they are in, and this is the Sri Lankan startup park from an idea stage, angel stage, early stage, Series A and Series B, and the type of ticket sizes they need for each stage, the number of startups, and pretty much you're talking 0.4% of the GDP is what we require. And as I said, most countries have it at 0.5%, at least leading countries with startups have it at that point. So automatically, this goes to show, obviously, we will end up with about 1,000 IT graduates. Most of them, I mean, we won't have large-scale services companies here, but we will have massive productized companies. We have the skill sets for that, right? And as I said, the stock exchange software is one of the best example of that. So that will eventually contribute towards our growth, and that's been our focus, and I think that should be the focus, at least. I'm hoping that it is enough incentives for investors like yourselves to come in. In our fund alone, we have about 8 or 9 Indian angels or venture capitalists who are in the fund, and they have seen how the market has grown and how we have taken it out. So this just gives also the exit opportunities we have, whether it's through an IPO or whether it's through a strategic sale, right? So as I said earlier, 15 years ago, MIT sold to LSE, and as recently as 2 years ago, Ensinga, which was a company out of Sri Lanka, they basically sold to a company in Singapore called Zilinco. So there are plenty of opportunities. All these companies develop the product here, test it here, and they move out to try and get exits out there. So we will probably not see many unicorns, but probably a handful going forward in the next 10 years. But for that, as I said earlier, we need the investments to come in. So in terms of a pipeline, this is what we have seen in terms of industry, in terms of the areas. Just for us alone, we have seen in the last 3 years, 350 companies come through. If you look at the deep dive companies, 70 are there, and we've only invested, that's just us, have only invested in 7 companies. So the rest of the 63 companies are out there looking for funding, and this could be one of the ones that could become a unicorn in the future. These are some of the examples of the companies that are out there who are looking for Series A funding. They are from various industries, just to give you a flavor. And last but not least, I just give you this last exit that we had from Singapore. So I think $1 million was invested, and $3 million was at exit. The investors got three times the exit in 2 years. So that's the kind of flavor you get through the startup ecosystem in Sri Lanka, because the ticket size is smaller. You probably end up exiting quickly because you don't have enough resources to grow them further, and sell it to somebody else. I mean, even with Linear Square, there was another company in AI. We sold to an Indian company called Algonomy, and that's moved on from there. So that's it from me, from the startup ecosystem perspective, and I'm happy to answer any questions or Feel free to come and talk to me with regards to any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Any questions? I'm happy to answer.
We can entertain during the fellowship time, sir. Thank you. Thank you very much, the Chairman of the Council of Startups of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Prajit Balasubramaniam, talking to you all about the Sri Lankan startup ecosystems. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we invite the next presenter, I would like to inform you all are most welcome to grab a cup of coffee or tea, which have been served at the back of the banquet. So, do feel free to grab a cup of coffee or tea during the presentation time to keep you all refreshed. The next presentation, ladies and gentlemen, from Sri Lankan startup ecosystems to the Startup India, would like to call upon the investment specialist, Invest India, will be joining us online. Please welcome Mr. Salil Seth to take us through Startup India. Mr. Seth, hope we are loud and clear.
Yes, you are.
All yours.
Respected dignitaries, member of the startup ecosystem from Sri Lanka and from India, welcome to my presentation. Today, I'll be presenting upon the startup ecosystem in India and the initiative government is taking to promote the startup ecosystem in the country. The startup ecosystem in India started way back in early 2000 with the startups when they started coming up in Bangalore, Gujarat. During the later course of the decade and in early 2010s, the first startup which went public, Zomato, was already being founded. But all the efforts which were taken before 2016 in India in startup ecosystem were in a little disjointed manner. That is, they were acting in silos. There were various startup hubs, but there was not a nodal agency at the center which governed the startup ecosystem, which helped the startup ecosystem grow, which handholded the startup ecosystem. So with that objective, Startup India initiative was launched in January 2016, by our Honorable Prime Minister as an action plan where 19 action points were given to us. Primarily, there were three pillars of this Startup India initiative, the action plan. Simplification and handholding, where Startup India was expected to simplify the regulatory. Startup India was expected to simplify the regulatory regulations which are there for the startups in the country, handhold the startups which are coming up in disruptive sectors. Second, come out with funding, support, and incentives for startup. And third, the time when we were launched, there were close to 400 incubators which were working out of various academic institutions, various IITs, triple IITs, and premier central universities in the country. And the idea was to provide them with a platform where they can have a direct relationship with industry, and an industry and market-focused research and product development could take place in partnership with each other, and direct incubation could be provided to startups by the corporates themselves. Before we delve into what we have done and what is the Startup India initiative, I would just like to share what has been the impact so far in past 6 years. In past 6 years, India has seen and we have recognized more than 57,000 startups. These startups have created 6.2 lakh direct jobs. 46% of these startups have at least one women entrepreneur and one women director. Back when we started in 2016, this figure was at 9%. Also, one interesting thing was to note that when we started in 2016, 75% of our startups used to come from three main cities, that is Delhi, Mumbai, and Bangalore. But with our concerted effort and the guiding light of the Honorable Prime Minister, where he said that there should not be a district, there should not be a state or a city in India where there should not be a startup, we are happy to share that now out of 740 districts in India, 632 have at least one startup. Majority of the startups are now coming from Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Delhi as before, but even the up-and-coming states such as Uttar Pradesh and Gujarat have done fairly well, and more startups are coming from there. To sectors as well, when we started in 2016, 80% of our startups were IT services and IT infrastructure based. But now, since we have even taken initiatives to support startups across all sectors, 9% of the startups are from healthcare, 7 from education, 5 from professional services, and 4 from agriculture. These are just the top 5 states and top 5 industries to show that how the startup ecosystem has diversified across geographical regions and across sectors in India. This is how the growth of the startup ecosystem have been and how we have mapped that. In 2016, there were only 4,200 startups. That has grown, as I shared, up 30, it has been 13x, where it has been more than now 57,000 startups. There were only 500 institutional investors and angel investors back in 2015. Today, there are more than 4,500 of those. Similarly, unicorns have grown. Funding in startup ecosystem had grown 8x. And the incubation, which is considered one of the most important pillars of the startup ecosystem, while a startup is taking off, they usually rely on these institutions to help and support them, have grown 7x in past 6 years. This is currently what the venture capital ecosystem of the country looks like, and where we have been majorly receiving the funding from. So the global VCs have been investing in India. Sequoia, Matrix, Excel, Lightspeed are very active. Domestic VC funds have also come up, like Chitrate and Bloom. These are homegrown VC funds, and later I'll cover it part of the presentation, that how government has supported VC funds within the country. Then we have specially technology-based funds, focused funds like SoftBank investing in India, hedge funds like Tiger Global, corporate VCs are now actively investing in startup ecosystem in India. And as a result of all the funding that has gone into startup ecosystem in past 6 years, this is the landscape of funding in startup ecosystem in India. We have already mapped more than $100 billion of funding has gone into startups. And as you can see that there has been a consistent growth in the number of deals. One interesting fact which has also come out of this deal, and which I would like to share with my colleague I was just looking at the presentation of Sri Lanka. The ticket size, as opposed to Sri Lanka, the ticket size in India in deals has been fairly very high, where 50% of the deals which have taken place have a ticket size of more than 100 million or more. Total in 2021 alone, the 32 billion has been invested in the startup ecosystem in India. And ever since you can see the pandemic, there has been a lot of funding in the startup landscape in terms of number of deals. At the same time, in the quantum as well, that the more deals are happening and the more money is also going into startup ecosystem. So these are some of the more facts, like due to the recent boom in the fintech sector has seen a fourfold increase in funding in startup ecosystem in India. And 84% of funding is driven by the growth and late stage deals. 76% deals have happened in the Bangalore and Delhi. Again, they're still the premier places where one, if wishes to expand their startup from any other country to India, can look and explore at. Also, during the later part of my presentation, I'll be sharing how companies who are looking from other companies to come into India can come here and set up shop, and how Startup India assists them. Okay, so this year, this decade, 2011 till 2021, is also called the decade of unicorns in India, where India has created 71 unicorns, more than any country, at least in the past 1 year. The quickest to turn unicorn has been Apna, a startup which has turned unicorn in India in less than 2.5 years. This year and last year alone, India have had added combined more than 60 unicorns. In 2021, the growth in unicorns in India actually surpassed even China. And now we are the country with the highest speed, country with the converting unicorns in the highest speed. So this has been majorly the impact of the Startup India's initiatives. Now, the later part of my presentation, and now in the following part of my presentation, I would like to cover what actually was the interventions made by Startup India, what we envisioned, and how did we achieve it. So what exactly a startup is there in India? This is the definition. Any company which is registered in India, which has an age of less than 10 years, that means it should not have crossed 10 years from the date of incorporation. It should not have exceeded more than 100 crore in any fiscal year as turnover, roughly $14 million. And it should be doing something to, should be doing something in innovation, some creating a new innovative product, should be, could be doing something which is very scalable, something like Uber or Ola, which are still considered startup, considering what they are doing is at very wide scale, could be into job creation or could be into wealth creation. To get recognized as a startup in India, it's very easy. It's a fairly 2 to 3 day process where you can fill a very simple online form. It takes hardly 15-20 minutes. You don't have to upload anything. All the information is already pre-fed by with the support of our inline ministries, where we have already done system level integration, and the form is completely online, paperless. You fill it within 15-20 minutes, explain a little bit about your business idea and what stage you're at, how many revenue you're making, how much revenue you're making, how many employees you have. And post that, our team evaluates the form and provides recognition. These are some of the notable benefits we have provided as part of the recognition in Startup India. First is easier public procurement norms, that any startup in India recognized with us doesn't have to qualify for prior experience and prior turnover criteria in public procurement process. Second, we have a dedicated patent and application and IPR support available. Third, the startups registered in India doesn't have to pay taxes for 3 out of 10 years if they are granted a tax exemption by Startup India. Fourth, any startup raising investment in India is exempt from angel tax. That's tax upon a fair market value of the equity, over and above the fair market value of the equity. Finally, we have set up of the fund of fund and for startup, which is 10,000 crores. And we have launched a seed fund scheme, which is for 945 crores. So any startup looking for funding from us can reach out to us, and depending upon the stage of the company, we suggest them what kind of funding opportunities are available with us. This is my second last slide. So majorly, we launched a host of initiatives and a lot of recognition benefits for the startups. At the same time, we also realized that there was a lot of information asymmetry which existed within the system, and tried to eradicate it. And today, with our concerted efforts, we can see that we have 5 lakh plus registered users on our portal. This is world's largest virtual incubation platform, where startups every month make more than 25,000 connects with each other, or it could be with incubators, accelerators, or with investors. And before finishing my presentation, just wanted to cover a key part of the Startup India Hub. So any company that is looking to set up base in India and wants to come as a startup from outside India to India, we have set up soft landing platform. There's a section which is called under networking, international bridges, where you can go and see what are the requirements and what are the rules and regulations which apply to a company from outside India coming into India. Similarly, we have launched a lot of marquee programs in association with corporates. We have released a host of tools and templates where any company looking to incorporate in India can just fill out simple form with the help of our tools and register and incorporate within India. Similarly, all the information that is required, that what rules and regulation apply, are also available. Rule and regulation apply, which are sector specific, are also available through an interactive dashboard where you can just fill your expected, where do you want to open shop, in which part of India, which state, which city. You can fill the expected investment and your sectors, and all the list which applies to that sector basis on the investment, and that area comes automatically. This is the last slide. So since 5 years has already happened in 2021, the action plan which we had launched was for 5 years. We realized that with time, most of the points in that 19-point action plan, which was either simplification or handholding or providing investment to startup or getting the startup from the ground and getting the ecosystem to be more mature, more aware, and there should not be an information asymmetry had already been achieved. So as a way ahead, on Jan 16, 2021, a new action plan has been launched of Startup India, where again a 14-point action point is given to take India from now currently the third largest startup ecosystem to the largest ecosystem in the world. So if you guys have any question, if the audience have any question, they can reach out to us through Twitter, through Facebook. We have a dedicated email ID. We also operate a toll-free helpline, but I'm not exactly sure if you're calling with through ISG, if it will work or not. And with that, the ending statement would be, what's the new big idea? The new big idea is India. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Senior Investment Specialist, Invest India, taking us through Startup India. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us from India, Mr. Salil Seth. Next, it's about New India growth, the story, and of course, the new government reforms. Once again, joining us online from India, it's time to call upon the Senior Investment Specialist, Ms. Yashika Kurana.
Thank you so much. Just wanted to check if I'm audible.
Yes, very much.
Thank you so much. A very, very good afternoon to all the distinguished guests present today. I would like to begin by thanking His Excellency Mr. Gopal Bagle, High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, and his entire team for giving us this opportunity today. Before we start, let me take this opportunity to formally introduce myself. My name is Yashika Khurana, and I'm a Senior Investment Specialist at Invest India. Invest India is the National Investment Promotion and Facilitation Agency set up as a non-profit venture under the Department for Promotion of Industry and Industrial Trade. Our core mandate is to attract and retain high-quality investments into the country. So we are considered as first point of contact for any potential investors who are looking at investing in India. Our team of functional experts provide sector and state specific inputs. So any handholding support which is being provided throughout this investment cycle, starting from the pre-investment phase to the post-investment and aftercare. All the services which are being offered by Invest India are on pro bono basis. On that note, let's begin. Please let me know once you are able to see my screen. Today, I'm going to showcase a new picture of India. India is changing and it's changing very fast. So here's a snapshot of the change I'm talking about. We are the fastest growing G20 economy. India ranks #1 in smartphone data consumer. We also rank second in internet usage. We are the third largest startup ecosystem. India ranks second in global retail index, and it has the third largest consumer market. India, which is the world's second most populous country, is expected to see massive growth over the next 3 decades, averaging 5% growth in GDP per year, making it one of the fastest growing economies in the world. By 2050, India is projected to be the world's second largest economy, which would account for 15% of the world's total GDP. It has also emerged as a powerhouse in the world economy with its large population, rapid expansion and investment in innovation. Going ahead with government's overall vision to build a self-reliant modern India driven by 5 I's, that is intent, inclusion, investment, infrastructure and innovation. India is amongst the highest in the GDP growth as compared to China, US and rest of the world, with a record of 20%, 26% growth in financial year 2021-22. We have also recently witnessed a jump in export in the last 1 year, primarily in the engineering goods, chemicals, gems and jewelry, pharma, and electronics sector. The next few slides will showcase the sheer market size of India. India is the largest producer of jute, millet, pulses, milk, tea, and one of the largest providers of universal health insurance. It also ranks #1 in outsourcing destination for IT and BPM. India ranks second in the production of polyester and silk, mobile phones, fruits and vegetables. It also ranks second largest consumer markets in the world, which makes it one of the most favorable destination manufacturing hubs to cater both domestic market and exports. Now, let me talk about few government recent initiatives or reforms. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list, but Government of India in the past 2 years have taken a lot of measures to boost investments and ease of doing business to make India one of the most feasible investment destination in the world. Talking about National Single Window System, it's a platform for guidance of investors to identify and apply for approvals as per this business requirements. Currently, it provides across 32 central departments in 16 states. The India Industrial Land Bank is also a GIS-based portal, which is sort of a one-stop repository for all industrial infrastructure-related information. Currently, this ILB portal has approximately 4,000 industrial parks mapped to it. Our FM last year has also reduced the corporate tax rate from 30 to 22% for existing companies and from 25 to 15% for new manufacturing companies, making it yet another important initiative to attract global investments. The PLI schemes, which has been recently announced as an outlay of $26 billion to provide incentives for 4 to 6 years across 13 key sectors, is also an initiative to create national manufacturing champions and generate employment opportunities within the country. The Central Ministry has also set up an empowered group of secretaries and project development cells in different ministries and departments of the central government to attract investments in India. This is also a new mechanism to reinforce India's vision of becoming a 5 trillion economy by 2025. It also aims to make India one of the largest players in the global value chain. Yet another important and interesting initiative is One District, One Product. The ODOP initiative, which is aimed at manifesting the vision of our Honorable Prime Minister to foster balanced development across all the districts of the country. This is the idea to select, brand, and promote one product from each district from the country to boost manufacturing and exports. Now, let me talk about the India-Sri Lanka relationship. India is Sri Lanka's closest neighbor. The relationship between both the countries is now more than 25 years old, and both sides have built upon a legacy of intellectual, cultural, religious, and linguistic interaction. In fact, in the recent years, the relationship has also been marked by growing trade and investment cooperation in the fields of development, culture, defense. The total trade between India and Sri Lanka stands at 4.14 billion US dollars, with an investment of 96.26 million USD in the last 1 year. This also accounts for 0.02% of India's total FDI. And I feel there is a lot of potential between both the nations to increase these numbers, the bilateral trade and investments in the upcoming few years. Now, let me touch upon few common sectors between India and Sri Lanka. To start with, energy. India ranks third in the renewable energy country attractiveness index in 2021. The country has also set an ambitious target to achieve a capacity of 175 gigawatts of renewable energy by the end of 2022, which expands to 450 gigawatts by 2030. This is the world's largest expansion plan in a renewable energy sector. Government has also introduced PLI production linked incentive scheme in high efficiency solar PV modules for enhancing India's manufacturing capabilities and also to enhance exports under the Atmanirbhar Bharat initiative, which is also the self-reliant initiative. The additional package of 2.6 billion US dollars has also been announced by the ministry in the recent budget. Moving on to the ports and shipping, India is strategically located on the world's shipping routes with a coastline of 7,517 kilometers. Maritime transport handles around 70% of India's trading in value terms. To promote India's shipping and port industry, the government has also introduced a lot of fiscal and non-fiscal incentives for companies that can develop, maintain, and operate ports and inland waterways in India. The government has also launched ambitious Sagarmala program in March 2017 with a vision of port-led development and growth of logistic-intensive industries. Moving on to the yet important sector, which is common between India and Sri Lanka, is the tourism. The tourism and hospitality industry is one of the largest services industry in India. India offers geographically diversity, World Heritage sites, niche tourism products like medical tourism, adventure, cruises, ecotourism. There has been a sudden slowdown in the hospitality and tourism sector due to the pandemic in the last 2 years, but with the sudden decline in the cases of COVID, we are expecting this industry to boom in the upcoming few months. By 2030, India is also expected to be among the top 5 business travel market. Last but not the least, the textile sector. The domestic and apparel textile industry in India contributes to 5% to the country's GDP, 7% of the industry output in value terms, and 12% of country's export earnings. India is the sixth largest exporter of textiles and apparel in the world. The Textile Ministry has also recently approved the production linked incentive for 5 years to promote production of man made fiber apparel, fabrics, products of technical textiles. On that note, I would welcome all of you to India and explore the abundant trade and investment opportunities. Please do reach out to us if you have any specific investment related queries or any other inputs required pertaining to any sector or state in India. Thank you once again for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about the success story of the new India growth and the new government reforms. We had the senior investment specialist, Ms. Yashika Kurana. Next, to talk about the overview, give you an overview of the industrial ecosystem, advantage of the Andhra Pradesh and the key focus sectors. Would like to call upon, joining once again online to us, Mr. Ajay Sharma, the Associate Vice President of the Andhra Pradesh EDB, on behalf of JVN Subramanian. He will talk. The Vice Chairman and the Managing Director for Andhra Pradesh Industrial Infrastructure Corporation, APIIC, and the Chief Executive Officer of Andhra Pradesh EDB. Please welcome Mr. Ajay Sharma.
Hi, good afternoon. And I would like to welcome on dais the Minister of Trade, Government of Sri Lanka, Honorable Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, and High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, His Excellency Gopal Bagle, and Chairman of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Vish Govindaswamy, and my friends and dignitaries. I will take you through the introduction to the Andhra Pradesh and what are the investment opportunities in Andhra and what collaboration we can have with Sri Lanka. As such, is the 8th largest state in India, and it ranked 3rd in the Sustainable Development Goals in the fiscal year 2020 and 21. In the ease of doing business, it's ranked 1 from last 3 years. It has a population of 71% in the workforce, and with a GSDP of 141 billion in 2020-21, with a connectivity of 974 kilometers and second in cargo handling capacity. Some of the strength in the ease of doing business, as I mentioned, that it has been ranked first from last 3 years, and it takes a maximum of 21 days for getting the approvals, electricity and other approvals required for setting up the industries. And the average time taken for the approvals are 14 days. As we know that a lot of industrial corridor projects are going on in India, and out of those 3, which is maximum in any state, are in Andhra Pradesh. 1, Vizag-Chennai Industrial Corridor. 2nd, Chennai-Bangalore Industrial Corridor. And 3rd, Hyderabad-Bangalore Industrial Corridor. These are the presence of the supply chain linkages, wherein the sector-wise across various districts, how the investment opportunities are there existing. Like in Visakhapatnam, we have pharma and life sciences, which is home to 250 units with 16% of India output. In East Godavari, we have chemicals and petrochemicals, which is having maximum oil and gas reserves, something to the tune of 1,130 million metric ton per annum. Then we have the Andhra Mid Tech Zone with the having Brandex, the Sri Lankan company, in investing in Visakhapatnam in the area of 1,000 acres. Likewise, we have in Anandpur the auto and EV components, and in Kadapa the mineral-based capital goods. In Chittoor, we have electronics managing clusters. So I would like to brief you about the enabling policies of Andhra Pradesh, the Industrial Development Policy 2020 and 23. The stamp duties, we have 100% reimbursement on the purchase and lease of land or shed or buildings. In the land allotment, we are providing 25% rebate on land conversion charges. For the power cost, we are providing 24/7 power supply, reimbursement at ₹1 per unit for 5 years. Investment subsidy, 15% of fixed capital investment up to ₹20 lakhs. Interest subsidy, 3% on term loan for 5 years. And with that, if you see that the net SGST, which is the employment linked incentives, the reimbursement of up to 100% for 5 years. So this is
I think I've joined now. Bye.
So this is the brief about our enabling policies in Andhra Pradesh. The key sectors, the focus areas and the opportunities which are there in pharmaceuticals, which is home to 250 plus pharma units and 38 WHO approved, 20 US FDA approved. 16% of India's production value is in pharmaceuticals is in Andhra. The other opportunities and the focus areas in the pharmaceuticals are APIs, biosimilars, specialty drugs, clinical R&D, AMTS, which is India's first integrated medical devices manufacturing park. In the chemicals and petrochemicals, which is home to maximum oil and gas reserves of 1,130 million metric ton per annum and the largest PCPR of 640 square kilometer. The HPCL refinery upgrade from 8.3 million metric ton per annum to 15 million metric ton per annum. The opportunities and the focus areas in this sector are to build self-sufficiency in petrochemical intermediates and drive downstream industries. In the electronics and the solar, we are having 3 to 3.5 million mobile phones are produced every month in Andhra Pradesh, which contributes 10% of electronics production in India. We are having 3 existing EMCs and new EMC at YSR Kopaparthi, clusters from Japan, Taiwan, China, and South Korea. The opportunities are in silicon wafers, PCBs, consumer electronics, electronic components, IT and hardware design, mobile components, batteries, solar cell and modules, telecom equipment, etc. In the food processing, we are the largest producer of eggs, fruits, mango, papaya, chili, lemon. We contribute 25% of food processing, 45% of marine, 10% of value-added product exports from India. We are commodity-based food parks in Krishna, Guntur, Nellore, Chittoor, which are the districts of Andhra Pradesh, with 15 metric ton food grains and 18 metric ton fruits. We are having the opportunities to strengthen FPOs, high-value processed products for exports, seafood parks with fish processing centers, packaging technology, cold chain, food testing labs, agri-equipment manufacturing. In the textiles, we are the 7th largest cotton producer, 1.9 million bales and 2nd largest raw silk production, 18,000 power looms, 7% of India's spinning capacity, new textile clusters being developed under Mitra scheme at Anandpur and Chittoor district. Opportunities in man-made fibers, eco-yarn, technical textiles, weaving, knitting, textile machinery. Toys in furniture, native clusters of Kondapalli and Raja Rani Toys Kadapa are globally renowned, employing 1,000 artisans. We offer export potential of $35 million at 5% contribution, home to vast timber deposits and rich resources of eucalyptus clonal plantations on Rajmundri, Prakasam, and Nellore districts. We are having opportunities in region-wise potentials, toy cluster coexisting with furniture, plastics, electronics and textile ecosystem, paper, plywood, MDF boards, particle boards, fiber boards, saw timber, laminated panels. Capital goods, machinery and engineering. About 221 large and mega units invested about 47,960 crore, employing 98,000 workforce. About 5,000 engineering base MSME support the demand for capital goods. The demand for effective utilization of machinery and tools in agriculture and allied sectors, mining, power transmission, and construction equipment. In the rubbers, tires, and automobiles, we are home to major auto investments from South Korea, Japan, Taiwan. We contribute 10% of auto exports to 30 countries. We have about 36 large mega auto players invested over USD 2.8 billion, driving ancillary ecosystem. Exports promotions opportunities from Andhra Pradesh. We are having the marine products 15%, ship boat structure 8.4%, 7.3% drug formulation, 7.4% iron and steel, rice 4.6%, and 3.6% residual chemicals. The network of seaports, I would like to mention that we are having the one major seaport at Visakhapatnam and 5 non-major ports with cargo handling capacity. The total port capacity is 253.89 million metric ton per annum. So the type of the cargo handling facilities at ports, their total berths 39. Visakhapatnam port handles 72.7 million metric tons. We are having 6 operational airports and 3 which are international airports. Visakhapatnam, Rajmundri, Vijayawada, Kurnool, Kadapa, and Tirupati. We would like to have an action plan for improving our export promotions, and for which we are looking into the policy support, the cluster focus, increasing the market access, increasing the ease of exports, enhance the logistics infrastructure, and upskill the training. These are some of the export potential products from various districts of Andhra Pradesh, like in Srikakulam, the cashew camels, and in Chittoor, the mango pulp and tamarind, Guntur, which is famous for chilies, turmeric, and tobacco. So likewise, we have mentioned in this sheet the various products which can be exported across various districts of Andhra Pradesh. These are the export opportunities with Sri Lanka. Important slide which shows that the amount of exports which are being sent to from AP to Sri Lanka in every fiscal year 2021, USD 12 million, and which covers the 0.4% of the share of India's exports to Sri Lanka and 0.1% share of AP exports. So we can see that there is a lot of potential of the Sri Lanka importing from Andhra Pradesh, because the Andhra is already exporting a lot of products which the government of Sri Lanka is importing from other parts of the world. These are our Honorable CM for reaching out for the investment promotions, and with US Consul General and with the Japan and the British Deputy High Commissioner and others. This is the video which I would like to play. One of the investors from the Sri Lanka, Brandex. 2 minutes video. So this is the testimony from the country head Brandex India Apparel City with the investment of 1,000 crores, employment 22,000 people, and on the 1,000 acres of land. So that is all from my end. I welcome you all and I look forward to have interaction with you in details. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that overview of the industrial ecosystem, the advantage of the Andhra Pradesh, and the key focus sectors. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are just tad behind the scheduled time. So, moving on, next we have got the presentation by the India Exim Bank, who's once again joining with us online. The Business Development Group, representing, ladies and gentlemen, the General Manager of India Exim Bank. Please welcome Mr. T.D. Sivakumar for the presentation on the Commercial Buyers Credit Program.
Am I audible? Can I
Yes,
request Mr.
yes.
Sharma to unshare the screen, please, so that I can share my screen? Mr. Ajay? Can you unshare so that I can share my screen? Yeah.
I think you need to unmute yourself, sir.
So am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. A very good afternoon to everyone. His Excellency, Ambassador, Indian Ambassador to Sri Lanka, and other dignitaries in this seminar. A very, very good afternoon. It's my privilege to make a presentation on this very eventful program, India-Sri Lanka Partnership for Sustained Growth. I'll be happy to make a presentation on India Exim Bank's programs for financing bilateral trade and investments. Even though I was informed that it will be on buyer's credit commercial, but I would like to expand the scope and cover all programs based on the understanding of the composition of the audience. To set the context, I just wanted to cover the bank's line of business, Export-Import Bank of India lines of business. In last financial year, the customer asset portfolio was more than 120,000 crores. To give a very, very brief profile, Exim Bank was set up under an Act of Parliament in 1981. We offer medium to long-term credit to support international trade and investment. About 80% of lending operations by India Exim Bank is in foreign currency, and we are considered proxy to the India's sovereign in international debt markets. We are a policy bank for India's economic diplomacy, and I think we do a great activity in Sri Lanka, which we can see in subsequent slides. Direct finance constitutes about 89% and refinance accounts to about 11%. To give you a broad view of region-wise exposure, South Asia constitutes a large portion, 37.19, which is a recent phenomena. Earlier it was only Africa, but South Asia has significantly increased its share, followed by East Africa, West Africa, Southern Africa, and other regions. In terms of loan portfolio, which is given on the bottom left, significant portion is constituted about by export finance, about 75%, followed by term loans to exporters. And overseas investment finance, again, a niche program which will be useful for this gathering. On the right-hand side bottom, we have the non-funded portfolio distribution, again, predominantly shared by performance guarantee, followed by advance payment guarantee, financial guarantee, etc. Exim Bank's loan programs can be broadly categorized into export finance and export capability creation. Under export finance, we offer lines of credit, consumer financing scheme, buyer's credit and national export insurance account, pre-shipment, post-shipment, and non-fund-based facilities for this. Under export capability creation, we offer term loans, working capital, export product development, export facilitation, post-investment finance, import finance, R&D, Ubrata Sitare, again, a very niche program which we have introduced recently, which I'll touch upon. Again, non-fund-based programs under all of these programs. Exim Bank has been facilitating trade through overseas linkages. The bank has issued 350 lines of credit covering 64 countries with credit commitments of US dollar 31.72 billion, some of which is in Sri Lanka also. BCNA program, about 32 projects of US dollar 2.8 billion financed for about 3.15 billion project cost. Here again, we have some projects in Sri Lanka. We do co-financing with regional multilateral development banks, credit lines to overseas banks, institutions, and refinance. Here again, we have some credit lines to Sri Lankan banks. The bank has supported 38 ongoing project export contracts under project exports valued at US dollar 3.6 billion, supported 29 countries and 25 Indian companies during 21. And 637. I think we'll see in detail in subsequent slides. Under lines of credit, you can see on the left-hand side the credit commitments of about US dollar 32 billion and outstanding of US dollar 6 billion. As I mentioned earlier, the bank has issued 350 lines of credit covering 64 countries with credit commitments of over 31.72 billion. The total outstanding under the lines of credit as on March last year aggregates to US dollar 6 billion, representing a CAGR of about 15% over the last 10 years and constitute about 40% of the loan portfolio of the bank, which is a sizable share. During last year, 17 LOCs aggregating to 2 billion were sanctioned to many countries, including Sri Lanka. Some of the few examples on the left-hand side, you can see your own example. India Exim Bank extended 2 lines of credit extended to government of Sri Lanka, aggregating about 800 million for reconstruction of railway lines in northern province. In the center, you can see a file photo where bank has extended a GOI supported line of credit of 100 million to Nepal for electrification projects. On the right-hand side, you will see Exim Bank extending line of credit of about 862 million for export of double-decker, single-decker, AC and articulated buses to Dhaka. And a construction financing scheme, this scheme was initiated in 2015 by Government of India for nominated projects. The CFS scheme could be expanded in the context of Atmanirbhar Bharat and to support Indian manufacturers under the PLI scheme in strategic industries. Under expansion of CFS, the bank can provide financing in both dollar and INR, setting up a manufacturing facilities in strategic industry by an identified company on concessional terms. Till now, we have funded one project which is a very large project, which is 1320 megawatt ultra supercritical Maitri super thermal power project on turnkey basis at Rampal, Bangladesh. It's a 50-50 joint venture between Bangladesh Power Development Board and NTPC Limited. This is again a file photo of this project, which is coming up in Bangladesh. Under CLMB, the primary objective of the Project Development Fund is to facilitate Indian investments and broaden the manufacturing base of Indian companies in CLMB countries. The bank is the implementing agency. We identified 4 projects, one in Cambodia, one in Myanmar, another one in Myanmar, another in Vietnam. Currently 2 projects, one in Cambodia and Vietnam, each are being pursued. Arrangement for establishing a special vehicle are being made. Once it comes to a bankable option, then it will be offloaded to an interested Indian company. Under bias credit, I think we have done a lot of projects in Sri Lanka. As on March 31st, 2021, the bank has sanctioned an aggregate amount of 2.88 billion for 32 projects valued at $3.15 billion. The outstanding BCNA portfolio stood about $1.48 billion as that was March 2021. On the left-hand side, you will have a geographic distribution of the sanctioned projects. On the right-hand side, you will have a geographic distribution of the outstanding projects. Here, I should mention that we have a lot of successful stories, especially in the water segment in Sri Lanka, some of which we can see. On the left-hand side, you can see the bank has sanctioned $124 million under BCNA to the Ministry of Finance for supply of 2 numbers advanced offshore patrol vessels to Sri Lanka Navy. In the center, you will see again under the BCNA facility, the bank has sanctioned 60 million to for water treatment plant under BCNA. On the right-hand side, again, a water treatment plant, but this is about $90 million for Pogalwa, Putura, and Alava integrated water supply project. The last one is being executed by Vietech Vabag. In fact, we have got a lot of accolades on, especially on the water treatment plants. Under project exports, on the left-hand side, you will see the sector-wise distribution. On the right-hand side, you will see the region-wise distribution. During FY21, around 38 projects, project export contracts valued at approximately 27,000 crores, supported by the bank, were under execution 29 countries across various regions like Asia, Africa, and CIS, by more than 25 Indian companies. Some of the success stories on the left-hand side, you will see a file photo where Exim Bank had supported KEC for setting up a 400 kV overhead line and 2 substations for Dubai Electricity and Water Authority. In the center, you will see Exim Bank supporting Sterling and Wilson by your bank guarantees for a project in Egypt, a solar project. On the right-hand side, you will see again Exim Bank supporting KEC for a transmission line Thai-Laos border. Again, it is a success story. And also investment finance, you will see on the left-hand side, you will be the geographic distribution of the sanctioned amount. On the right-hand side, you will see the geographic distribution of the outstanding amount. Unlike the earlier products, here you will see a wider distribution of regions starting from Southeast Asia, Far East, and Europe, Americas, etc. As of March 31, 2021, bank has so far provided finance to 630% ventures set up by our 476 companies in 78 countries. And during last year, total disbursements aggregating about 327 crores were disbursed, and the net loan outstanding under the OF portfolio is about 4,000 crores, costing about 10% of our portfolio, which is a sizable portion. These are some of the examples where we supported an auto component company in Chennai who was setting up a project in Morocco. On the right-hand side, a chemical company which is doing a project in USA. On the left-hand side, we have supported a company from Bangalore to set up to acquire a company in Netherlands. On the right-hand side, we have you'll see a file photo where bank has funded Naran Hridayalaya, a well-known hospital in Bangalore, for acquisition of Health City Cayman Islands under the OF program. Honorable Finance Minister of Government of India has announced this program, Ubrita Sitare, in the finance budget of FY 2020. This program is set up with the objective of identifying nurturing firms with differentiated products, technology, or process to provide finance and extensive handholding support, by which we catalyze export, economic growth, and employment, and by which we create international champions in India. We collaborate and engage with various academic and export promotion councils, who are the various stakeholders in identify such MSMEs. We offer value proposition through a relationship between Exim and SIDBI, also with commercial banks and FIs. These are some of the examples where we have supported Amrita Sitare. The first one is where we have supported a near virgin quality plastic manufacturer. On the next to the right, you will see Exim Bank supporting a manufacturer of unmanned aerial vehicles for an export contract in Philippines. To the right, you will see Exim Bank supporting an MSME for setting up, which manufactures phospholipids, which is a key ingredient for mRNA vaccine. To the right, we will see Exim Bank supporting a company which is in terms of solar energy storage for storage solutions. In this slide, you can see on the left-hand side, Exim Bank supporting a company which manufactures fans, but actually instead of AC motors, they manufacture DC motors. In the center, you'll see Exim Bank supporting a company which manufactures auto components starting from alpine rings, centrifugal castings, etc. To the right, you will see Exim Bank supporting a company which has patented technology, which has exclusive license on a global basis for the said technology to manufacture innovative copper titanium alloy. Exim Bank has introduced a new program called Trade Assistance Program. In fact, actually, this actually can work for Sri Lanka. In fact, we are looking at some pilot transactions to Sri Lanka. This is basically to help Indian exporters who get LCs from overseas importers, but whose bank are not very comfortable confirming LCs. They look forward for Exim Bank to guarantee. We have actually got the board approval. We are looking at pilot transactions, including a few transactions in Sri Lanka. We have actually sanctioned credit lines to 5 Sri Lankan banks, and we are working very closely with these banks to find how we can support exports to Sri Lanka. This is how it works. I'll be more than happy to explain the thing. Exim Bank has also got an approval to set up a separate subsidiary for offering factoring to Indian companies where they export. This is how factoring works. Exim Bank is also working on counter trade, as I think if I can mention, counter trade refers to the exchange of goods and services in whole or part with other goods and services as payment rather than with money. And we again are working with some of our counterparties in Sri Lanka to find out whether we can work on counter trade, wherein we can export something to Sri Lanka, which is something like food, pharma, and other essential products, wherein in turn we can get some other products. But this I would say this is more in a blueprint stage. We need to work with various stakeholders both in India and Sri Lanka, but this is something a doable transaction. If it is possible, we'll love to do with Sri Lanka. Some of the potential areas of support we have classified into 4 categories. First, for Indian exporters, including project exporters and Indian investors in Sri Lanka. We can offer export credit on a commercial basis, where we can offer fund-based and non-fund-based, both medium-term and long-term. Under term loans, we can offer term loans for various purposes, starting from export capability, which is, I think, a very, very a common product for Exim Bank. We also offer what is called capital equipment financing, especially for the project exporters, or equivalent to production equipment finance program for the manufacturers. We give OS investment finance, which will be a very interesting product for Indian companies who are looking at investment into Sri Lanka. We can give a loan to Indian company for its equity investment or on lending to Sri Lanka. We can also offer under niche programs for Indian companies which wants to invest in R&D, marketing, as well as production development. Under Ubrata Sitare, Exim Bank offers debt, mezzanine debt, equity, and technical assistance. This is primarily for the vendors of Indian exporters as well as the investors. This will help the Indian exporters and investors, not only they develop, but also they develop the vendors. For Sri Lankan companies, which also includes ventures of Indian companies, Exim Bank offers commercial buyer's credit, both medium to long term for importing from India. Term loans, which is primarily for Indian ventures of Indian companies, we will offer overseas investment for basically for capex as well as working capital requirements of these ventures of Indian companies in Sri Lanka. Exim Bank on selective basis can also consider investing in equity of this Sri Lankan venture of Indian companies, but will be a minority shareholder, basically to handhold the this venture up to a certain stage where we'll decide the predefined IRR and exit at a appropriate time. For Sri Lankan government and quasi-government, I think we have, we have already given BCNA. We have seen some 2 examples, and the lines of credit also we have, we can consider. CFS we are currently done for Bangladesh, but if an opportunity comes, we can look at, with the approval of the government, we can look at, looking at CFS for a suitable project. For Sri Lankan banks, we currently have export credit lines, both short-term and medium-term. As I mentioned, we have export credit lines to 5 Sri Lankan banks. We can give counter guarantees if the project authority in Sri Lanka wants a local guarantee from a Sri Lankan bank. Based on our counter guarantee, the Sri Lankan bank can front our guarantees, and then which can be accepted by the project authority in Sri Lanka. The counter trade, which we have been discussing with some of the counterparties in Sri Lanka. This is the last slide where Exim Bank has presence to more than 100+ countries through various programs. I'll be more happy to take any questions. I wanted to make a very brief presentation for want of time. I'll be happy to take any questions now or a little later. Thank you.
Thank you very much. General Manager, Business Development Group of the India Exim Bank, taking us through on the commercial buyers credit program. Ladies and gentlemen, going back to the set schedule, we have now Mr. Sanjay Agarwal. In fact, we have now Mr. Prasanjit Vijayatilaka, the Executive Director of Board of Investments of Sri Lanka, to talk about the investment opportunities currently in Sri Lanka. Please welcome Mr. Prasanjit Vijayatilaka.
Good evening, everyone. Minister of Trade, Mr. Bandula Gunawardena, High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Mr. Gopal Bagle, Deputy High Commissioner and officials of the High Commission, Honorable Governor of the Northern Province, Jeevan Tyagaraja, Mr. Vish Govindaswamy, and Mr. Manjul Dissilva from the Ceylon Chamber, visiting delegates from the CII. It's good to see you all again. And I'll make a very brief presentation on a few select investment opportunities that we believe would be of interest to the visiting delegation primarily. So without further ado, I'll give you an idea of the fundamentals behind selecting these particular opportunities. So what we are looking at and what I would call our immediate priority as the Board of Investment is doubling the country's GDP. And how we propose to do that is through selected growth sectors. There are 6 of these, which I'll be detailing shortly. And how we actually intend to boost these growth sectors is through creating an investor-friendly environment. So now an investor-friendly environment is it varies from sector to sector what is important to make a particular sector or attractive in a country. And it is to that end that actually initiatives such as this by the High Commission are very important, because both sector-wise and country-wise, there's different priorities that come into play when you're trying to promote a sector. And there's a lot that we can learn from engagement like this, which will make our efforts more meaningful. So I look forward to engaging with you all again today, subsequent to the presentation as well. So we have on this slide some of the basic arguments for investing in Sri Lanka. So we're talking about the location, the fact that we are well connected, we consider ourselves a gateway to the Indian subcontinent, and in terms of the relevant infrastructure to leverage that value, we have made certain investments and we continue to make investments, especially in terms of transport infrastructure, to really add value to that key point. Next is the workforce. Now, I prefer to use the word talent pool when comparing, especially when you're presenting Sri Lanka to a very large population like India, for example. So what we really leverage is the value for money factor. We leverage the adaptability. We leverage innovation. We had Prajit talking about the startup ecosystem that we have here. And I think you will agree, Prajit, we punch above our weight when it comes to what we bring to the table. So this talent pool also, we're looking at growing this. We're looking at 3 times the number of graduates in the next 5 to 10 years. Similarly, as a small country, market access, or who you reach out of Sri Lanka, is very important. So we're just 22 million people, but we provide access to over 2 billion people, market sizes of over 2 billion in total. So this is across South Asia and East Africa. And we have IPAs and double taxation agreements with a number of countries, which make investing in Sri Lanka that much more attractive. In terms of investment policy, We are one of the first countries in this part of the world to open our economy. We have zero restrictions when it comes to foreign ownership across most major sectors, most industrial sectors. The safety of foreign investment is guaranteed by our constitution, and we are signatory to the World Bank's Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. So in terms of security of investment, we provide a strong level of comfort, especially in this part of the world. From a tax or what we call a fiscal perspective, Sri Lanka is again very competitive against our regional peers. So our standard CIT rate at 24% is somewhat below an Asian average of around 30%. And our reduced CIT rate is even more attractive at 14%. We have dividend exemption, we have dividend tax exemptions in place. We have PAL exemptions for, that's the Port and Aviation Levy. We have exemptions there for investments over $50 million. We have cess exemptions, again for investments over $50 million, or raw material for export-oriented projects, for tourism projects, for the health sector. We have customs duty and VAT exemptions for selected sectors and industries. We have what is called an enhanced capital allowance. This is for investments over $3 million, where you can double your depreciation and your period for unrelieved losses extends as much as 10 years. The column on the right-hand side of the screen there shows you tax exemptions for select sectors, from agriculture farming to IT and IT-enabled services, vocational and education, and a number of sectors that I'd be happy to discuss with you one-on-one based on your industrial interest. And so this gives you the bottom line perspective, how the rupees and cents, as we call it, of making your home here in Sri Lanka and doing business out of Sri Lanka. I mentioned 6 growth sectors. So now these growth sectors are what we will consider to be the pillar of this economy, the Sri Lankan economy, over the next 10 years. So you look at manufacturing, information and communication technology, hospitality and tourism, or the leisure sector as we call it. There's agriculture and food processing, and then of course construction and infrastructure. So if you see in the manufacturing sector, we've got a number of select subsectors, from pharmaceutical, the high value-added part of apparel and textile. Then there's electronics and electricals. ICT, we're looking at anything from knowledge services to software development, even training institutes, and of course emerging tech. The leisure sector, I saw a lot of similarities in the Andhra Pradesh presentation as well. So we're looking at very similar, there's a lot of experience sharing to be had there. So agro and ecotourism, adventure tourism, of course the MICE business and the luxury hotels. Agriculture and food processing, rubber is one of our thrust sectors. Then there's agri, or what we call processed food for food processing, and fisheries or aquatic resources. Construction and infrastructure is here mainly as an enabler of almost all of these sectors. So it's an enabler of the economy. It creates much wanted logistic and other capacities to facilitate not only investment but business in any of these industries. So our investment map will be based on these 6 pillars. I mentioned a number of select investment opportunities. So giving some thought to the delegation as well as, I would say, the areas of expertise that India has shown, especially in recent times. We've selected these few projects because we think that these are areas where both countries can benefit significantly. So the pharmaceutical zone is looking at primarily catering, and when I say primarily, that's the first step of catering to a domestic market of around anywhere between 650 to 750 million USD, which is our domestic demand. This is projected to grow, as it says on screen, of a CAGR of close to 8 to 10%. And the current supply from local manufacturing is only at around 15%. So we want to grow this to around 40% over the next 5 years. So what you're looking there is an investment headroom of 35%. With the kind of, can I say, with the reputation and the prowess that India has made for itself in this sector, I think it's almost obvious extension of your businesses going global if you were to set up in Sri Lanka and consider part of this market. Now, when I say part of this market, I'm not only talking about the local market here that is represented at 650 to 750 million dollars. I'm talking about an independent export vertical here of circa $1 billion within that same period, which will obviously then grow. So it is strong potential, and we are one of the largest buyers, it says there on screen, of medicine in Asia. We provide free healthcare to all citizens. So at least 50% of that pharmaceutical import bill is absorbed directly by the state, and the rest by a very, very competitive private sector. So this is a ready and growing market, and then based on market access out of Sri Lanka, there's an even greater opportunity. For this, we've earmarked a zone in the southern part of the country, in Hambantota. It's a 400-acre zone which will be developed in 2 stages of 200 acres each, and phase 1 is already underway. In terms of incentives, this project has been designated as what we call a strategic development project. So when it's designated as an SDP, as we call it, this means a project that will change the economic landscape of the country. So with this comes a number of bespoke incentives, first of which is the CIT, the tax holiday as we call it, of 5 to 10 years, depending on the type of investment and the value of investment. You are also subject to no import tax or zero import tax, both for your capital goods as well as your raw material on an ongoing basis. Foreign employment is also permitted because we understand that there will be specialized skills that need to be brought in that may not be available in the local market. And of course, the understanding is that these skills will then be transferred to the Sri Lankan talent pool over the course of the project period. Tax exemptions for expat employees, and of course, as I mentioned at the very onset, 100% foreign ownership is permitted in this sector. So that's a snapshot on the pharmaceutical zone and the opportunity therein. I will next move to another strategic development project, which is a textile zone, which is in the eastern province, which again will be developed in 2 phases, the first of which is 200 acres. This is already at a slightly more mature stage than the pharmaceutical zone. We've already identified a pipeline of around $90 million for this zone. We've just signed our first agreement last month. We have a couple more to be signed in the very, very near future. So what we're looking at here is creating a $1 billion import substitution vertical. Because as well you know, the apparel industry is literally a cornerstone of our economy. It's a $5+ billion output, of which, if you look at the net export, there is around a $2 billion figure that we want to reduce or whittle away at. So this is where we want to create. We've identified around $1 billion in terms of both knitted and woven fabric that can be produced in-house. Now, again, as a destination in terms of fair trade, in terms of a cost-competitive workforce, in terms of what I would say the complexity of production when it comes to the apparel sector, and even more recently into the high-tech piece of apparel, Sri Lanka has made a name for itself. So there is something that can be leveraged on there as well through investing in Sri Lanka and being part of that supply relationship. So I welcome you all to explore your interest and even take this message back to your membership for those in companies who might be interested. Now, here again, the fiscal incentives are taken care of because this too is a strategic development project. So you are entitled to a tax holiday. You are, again, there are no taxes on import for both your capital goods as well as your raw material. The same theory applies to foreign employment and tax for expats. And once again, 100% foreign ownership is permitted. So after these two strategic development projects, we're next looking at the IT sector and how the state wishes to support the IT sector. Now, the IT sector in Sri Lanka, just to share some of the, if you look at some of the details there, you're looking at about a revenue of anywhere between 1.2 to 1.5 billion dollars annually at the moment. That's the current picture. This is, in a best case scenario, this will double in the next 2 years, next to 2 to 3 years. In order to facilitate that revenue growth, there needs to be a boost or a shot in the arm for the talent pool, as well as the number of players in the market. So there lies the headroom for investment of around a $1.5 billion opportunity within the economy. So we have, when it comes to our infrastructure, when it comes to being tech savvy, the Sri Lankan population is quite, our mobile phone penetration is quite high. We've been the first in this part of the world to launch both 4G and 5G. You have a young population that is very, very keen to be employed or to participate in the ICT space. So there is a lot of anticipation. There's a lot of, you have an eager talent pool. So there's plenty of opportunity. We have a more recent success story in HCL from India coming down to Sri Lanka and rapidly expanding their investment plans in Sri Lanka from a 500-seat business recovery unit to a fully fledged 1,500 plus seat unit. So therein lies the potential in this sector. And in order to develop this further throughout the country, they've identified a number of locations. What you see there, you will see it's mostly in the central and the north central part of the country, as well as the southern coast. So the idea is to make sure that this development and the opportunities are available across the island, and so that companies will also be able to tap into the opportunity, companies will be able to tap into the, what we would call the talent pool from all parts of the country. So here again, IT has been identified as a sector with zero CIT. This is as far back as budget 2020. We have no import taxes on capital goods. Foreign employment again is permitted, and there are exemptions in VAT. And of course, there's 100% foreign ownership. There are no restrictions when it comes to repatriation of profits, dividend, and so on. So that brings my presentation to a close. As mentioned, we've just identified some select projects which we think would be of interest to you. I'd be happy to take any conversation further in any other sectors as well. And as you can see in this final slide here, we are here to assist you with anything from research to a site visit, location analysis. We can connect you to the relevant stakeholders. We'll facilitate your clearances. Basically, we want to be your single port of call, or what you call a one-stop shop for investment here in Sri Lanka. So myself and my team, we remain at your disposal to engage with you and take your interest further. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present.
Thank you very much. The Executive Director of the Board of Investment of Sri Lanka, Mr. Prasanjit Vijayatilaka, taking us through the investment opportunities available in Sri Lanka. Next, ladies and gentlemen, to talk about electronics and computer software export promotion, especially about Sri Lanka India ICT sector finding the right synergies. Would like to call upon Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, Chairman of the Electronics and Computer Software Export Promotion Council of India, will be joining us online now. Mr. Agarwal.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much for this opportunity. Let me share my screen, and I will proceed from that point onwards. Is my screen visible?
Yes, very much.
Thank you. So my greetings to all the dignitaries present in this forum. Thank you very much for being here, and my sincere thanks to His Excellency Gopal Bagle, the High Commissioner of India, and of course, my deepest appreciation for the organizing team for giving the India's Software Export Promotion Council this opportunity. I will keep my presentation very brief, but before that, give me a moment to introduce the Electronics and Software Export Promotion Council. ESC is India's apex trade promotion organization mandated to promote India's exports of electronics, telecommunications, computer software, and IT-enabled services. ESC regularly enables various counterpart associations worldwide and Indian missions abroad to exchange commercially useful information for the benefit of member companies. Market surveys are conducted on a regular basis to identify export potential items and markets. The various promotion activities carried out on a regular basis are product-specific delegations to select countries, exclusive Indian electronics, IT, and ITES exhibitions, country participation in specialized trade fairs, catalog shows, buyer-seller meets, product-specific seminars, conferences, and roadshows, both in India and abroad. And I'm delighted to tell you that starting tomorrow, we have a major event, which is our flagship event, IndiaSoft, being held in Delhi. As usual, we have invited over 300 collaborators from various countries, and they are all now in India. They will be participating in the two-day event, and I would request and encourage more participation from Sri Lanka in the coming years. It has been, for me as the head of my commercial venture, which is Eastern Software, it has been an extremely beneficial relationship. And I would encourage my colleagues in Sri Lanka to participate, and they would find that it is a very, very interesting and profitable venture. Now on to the presentation. Let me talk about the synergies that are possible between our two countries for a couple of minutes. Of course, some of this data has already been shared by the speakers who preceded me. The Sri Lanka software business is estimated at $1.2 billion in 2021, employs 80,000 people with 5,000 being added every year, and a highly talented engineering expertise at that. We are all aware that many large multinationals from US and Europe are deeply engaged. And there's a plan to reach 5 billion, which I read in the literature. And my previous speaker said the plan is now at 2 to 3 billion, which is also amazing. And that would be wonderful if it can be achieved. And obviously, it was identified as a key sector for the economy. India, of course, we are all well aware that has made tremendous strides in the area of software technology, and its exports are worldwide, they are booming. India last year exported close to $196 billion of software and services. At the end of this year, at the end of this calendar year, that is, we expect the Indian growth to be of $227 billion worldwide, employs 5 million people. In fact, it would, if we count it as an industry, it would rank as one of the largest employers in the entire economic sector. We are present in almost every conceivable area of technology, and the demand for India's software development services as well as products far outstrips the supply. This demand boom has occurred, especially during the COVID period, where surprisingly, the entire world found the merits of work from home, and that translated to digitalization amongst all organizations as well as governments, as a result of which the demand for technology and so on has boomed. And today we are in a situation where, in spite of the 5 million people that are employed, we find that we don't have enough technology talent. Companies from every part of the world are now converging on India for technology services. It doesn't matter whether they are in software as pure play software people, or they are manufacturing giants or R&D giants or biotechnology giants. Companies who are dependent on software or any kind of associated services find India a wonderful hub for basing their own operations, as a result of which the business is booming. Of course, the first presentation of this session also talked about that in India alone last year, there were 36 unicorns. Unicorns obviously mean that people, the organizations who have received a valuation of over $1 billion. So last year alone, 36 startups got a valuation of over $1 billion. And this number is expected to only increase in the current year, 2022. The incredible thing is that the government is a very active participant in technology usage with a citizen-centric view. Now, let me expand on that as I go to the next slide. For example, in India, the IT for citizen services is what is called UIDAI, commonly called as the Aadhaar system, where every citizen gets an Aadhaar card, which becomes his identity. And it has been distributed to every Indian across the length and breadth of the country. That means there are 1.3 plus billion cards now in circulation, each individual having got one. Now, my point here is that the government of India did UIDI, it did universal banking, or it took banking to every smallest earning member or every individual, regardless of whether they had the money to maintain a healthy balance or a large balance. Even zero balance accounts were enabled. That led to digital payments. That led to direct benefit transfer schemes, where benefit of the government schemes could be directly credited into the accounts of the individuals. In fact, even COVID management was a huge technology success for India, where right from tracking and tracing the people who were suffering from COVID and down to the vaccine management, the first dose, the second dose, the booster dose, everything was driven by technology. Now, what it means for us as technology service providers, as people involved in the industry, is that in any of these areas, there is so much technological depth which is available in India. And I am aware, because I have had interaction with various government officers who are involved in providing these services, that the government is willing to share the technology, transfer the technology to its counterparts in various countries. And of course, Sri Lanka being our immediate neighbor figures very, very high. We are happy to share the technology, and I would request that any of these things where you have interest, they can be enabled either in the government to government contacts or through ESC member companies. Wherever such expertise is available, that can be easily shared with our counterparts in Sri Lanka. There are, at a lower scale, a very large number of e-government solutions which have been created in India. They have been created by NICSI, the National Informatics Center software arm, the commercial arm of the NIC. These solutions are available virtually free of cost to all governments, and they can be obtained very easily through a simple request mechanism, including the transfer of technology, including training of local people. All that is available, and therefore they become great enablers of growth as well as that of the economy. Another possibility is collaboration for marketing of products and services. I would like to take an anecdotal example of my own company, Eastern Software Systems. We operate in many parts of Africa. And when we were looking for a specific solution, we found a partner in Sri Lanka in Colombo, and we have been cooperating with them for the past 6 years. And the collaboration has been extremely successful and fruitful. And therefore, I think that this could be an example which could be extended across various other software companies, because I know that as a small company, one of our biggest challenge has been how to market our products and services across the world, across various markets where we directly do not have access. So by collaborating with Indian companies, the software businesses in Sri Lanka can offer their products and services across the globe because the number of Indian companies who are present in various continents in various parts of the globe is very high, and they continue to seek high quality solutions, which again, I speak from personal experience, are available in Sri Lanka. And I know that this could be a great win-win situation for both the countries and the organizations of our countries. I also noticed in the literature that I was reading that the number of engineers who are coming out from various universities is about 5,000. As I said, India today employs millions of people in the software business. And one of our own experiences has been the lack of numbers in people, especially in the past couple of years. So one of the things that could be of interest is to bring technology training mechanisms from private institutions, from government universities, and so on, so that the total availability of tech talent becomes higher and higher. Technology, unfortunately, is such a business which, in spite of doing a whole lot of automation for others, does require a lot of human intervention. It does require a lot of human ingenuity, and therefore development of talent in large numbers is a vital component of expanding the business in the specific segment. So this could be another area where both countries can cooperate and increase the talent pool that is available. And of course, if there is any talent that is available, I'm sure Indian companies would be more than happy to snap it up at any stage. We know that both our countries have economies which are very manageable and costs that are very manageable. So therefore, it would make immense sense for the software companies and software businesses in Sri Lanka, in the event that they have spare capacity, to reach out to their Indian counterparts for better utilization, as well as development of skill sets that may or may not exist in the country at the present moment. So this would help in not only utilizing the engineering talent, but possibly also enhancing through the Indian experience in a very wide range of areas. Although I know I've seen various sites and the various literature that the Sri Lankan software companies are operating in a very diverse range of technology services. Going back to the startup market, as I said, last year alone, there were 36 unicorns and a very large number of startups which are yet to become unicorns. Now, my short point here is that the learning of the startup culture, learning how to imbibe, how to create a startup, how to expand it, how to make it a unicorn, such experiences can become available to those who have interest. And I'm sure collaboration between ESC members as well as others will help in getting to this point very easily. I must also share my personal example, which I observed, 15 years ago, when I worked with ESC as a member, or with other organizations who do similar, who are software export support organizations such as NASSCOM. Every meeting that I would go to, every symposium that I would go to, there would be a very large number of participants from China. And this happened over a period of at least 5 to 7 years. Now, after that, in my many visits to China, I observed that the ecology that they have been able to create was initially mimicking what was going on in India. They learned a lot from their Indian experience. As always, the Indian companies as well as the government was very open in sharing their experiences, their knowledge, their processes and methods. And as a result, the technology boomed, the technology businesses boomed in China. I'm in no way trying to say that we need to take credit for any of that, but I'm saying maybe some of the experience sharing that we were able to do could have helped. So maybe a similar participation from Sri Lankan companies in the startup culture or in the technology business could be of assistance, not only to the Sri Lankan companies, but from their experience to the Indian counterparts as well. As of now, the electronics hardware trade between our two countries is very, very small, less than $10 million. And there is nothing great in stating that this is a great area for improvement for mutual gain. And our member companies from the Electronics and Software Promotion Council are more than happy to engage, to assist, and to develop cooperation. That's all from my side. Thank you very much. I would be happy to take any questions now or later. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sanjay Agarwal, the chairman of the Electronics and Computer Software Export Promotion Council of India, taking us through Sri Lanka India ICT sector, finding the right synergies. One final presentation before we have the forum with the dignitaries gracing this occasion, adding their keynotes. Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to call upon the Assistant Director for the Coastal Aquaculture Extension and Monitoring Unit of the Northern Province, who's here with us to talk to you about the investment opportunities in aquaculture in Sri Lanka. Please welcome Mr. B. Niruparaj.
Good evening, all of you. Sorry, I'm removing my mask. Honorable Minister Dr. Bandla Gunaratana, Trade Ministry, Sri Lanka. Honorable Governor Jeevan Tyagaraja, Governor to the Northern Province, Sri Lanka. His Excellency Gopal Bagle, High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, and other colleagues from Sri Lankan institutions, as well as the people who are tirelessly working for this kind of intervention from Indian High Commission. So thank you for your opportunity to present feasible and identified investment opportunities on aquaculture in Sri Lanka. As you know, all aware, Sri Lanka called as Pearl of Indian Ocean, not only by the shape of Sri Lanka, the resources also similar to a pearl, that much of marine resources we have. And meantime, India and Sri Lanka only divided by 32 kilometers of maritime boundary. So I think it's an opportunity to have more investment as well as the expertise on aquaculture and fisheries, which India has already. This is a kind of our contribution to the national economy and export through the fisheries and coastal aquaculture and inland aquaculture. Comparatively, the aquaculture is an emerging industry in Sri Lanka. Recent past only, we are working with coastal aquaculture as well as inland aquaculture, which, we have been compelled because our marine resources already depleted and we are facing a kind of, consequent issues because of depletion. That's everywhere, not only in Sri Lanka. And these are the resources which is, we are portraying for the investment with the freshwater and the brackish water. Freshwater really comparatively, I think globally we are in a very good position with the non-polluted freshwater resources as it's mentioned here. And meantime, our coastal resources also comparatively good. We have 1,700 plus kilometers of coastal stretch that is, with immense resources for aquaculture practices, since we have more than 25 square kilometers of territorial sea. It's a kind of continental shelf, less deeper area than the EEZ. The freshwater resources, nearly 300,000 hectares of freshwater resources spread around Sri Lanka. That's ratio-wise 4.5 hectare per square kilometer, as we have 65,000 square kilometer land mass. Then every 4.5 hectares, every kilometer has 4.5 hectares of fresh water. This blue dots are showing how our reservoir system, especially freshwater reservoir systems, are expanded. And the favorable factors, and I think the previous presentation from BOI already mentioned how our workforces, how our environment, and apart than that, for this aquaculture investment, we have to consider more about climate conditions. So since we are a tropical country, our climate conditions are more or less defined. So in few occasions only, I mean, we are receiving unprecedented or unpredicted calamities. Especially now government has given, I mean, they are prioritizing the coastal aquaculture development since we have untapped coastal resources, and we feel that the coastal resources, I mean, furthermore will not support for our fisheries since it is a global crisis, fisheries. So we are more concentrating on aquaculture, and we have done a lot of researches with universities and international experts, as well as we are working with Indian experts also for our research in aquaculture. We are getting several industrial experts also for our, personally we are contacting, and institutionally we are contacting for the research. Separate government institution already established, but it's an all institution. They established in 1998 National Aquaculture Development Authority, but recently they have established a separate unit to develop coastal aquaculture development. So we have 4 provincial functional unit, one in north, one in east and south and west. North, east and northwest, that covering west also are, vigorously functioning to find out the locations and working with the investment, promotion, and working with new feasible location, identification of feasible locations and things. And meantime, NARA, it's a designated institution for research under the Ministry of Fisheries. So it has been working with investors as well as NAGDA and the other institutions also to find out more lucrative investment opportunities in Sri Lanka. And similar to the other investment also, the VOI also supporting to aquaculture. Still we are working more with them to have more close communication and closely work together. So these are the species already in consideration, already we are working, and already in practice also. It's a set of species in both freshwater. All the species are freshwater. Almost all species studied in Sri Lanka. Trial. There are a lot of trials done in Sri Lanka. Already we have working with the public, a kind of rural economic development engagement through the aquaculture in the freshwater system. All those species are introduced with the public. But we expect more intervention through the industries to utilize these untapped freshwater resources for aquaculture development. I think India, they are doing a lot with these freshwaters. In some, regions, they prefer freshwater fish than marine fish, I heard. So these are the species from the brackish or marine water we are working presently. Recently, we introduced Vanami also. It is performing well. Within 2-3 years, we are reaching a, high yield in history of Sri Lanka. And seaweed, as I mentioned in my previous slides, we have 1,700 kilometers of coastal stretch. Out of this 1,700, northern region itself has more than 500 kilometers of coastal stretch. And it's a purely continental shelf, shallow seas, and comparatively less polluted than the other regions or other countries in South Asia. So it's good for seaweed cultivation. Already we work with several investors as well as Indian investors also. And the sea cucumber, that is one of our primary export commodity from the coastal fisheries even. But now with the depletion, we are moving towards sea cucumber farms. Identified more than 5,000 acres of highly feasible locations, almost nearly 2,000 acres already distributed among the farmers, and a few investors also. Almost all are from Sri Lanka, but we are expecting more investment from the other parts, especially from India, for both farms and hatcheries also. Similarly, mud crab, Sri Lankan mud crab, we have, that's a delicacy in East Asian countries as well as Singapore also. Because of our environmental conditions are really favoring a better muscle taste and everything. So, I mean, sometimes you may have experienced it also. And sea bass, we are really good in the sea bass cultivation since we have good places in Trinco that is highly feasible and environmentally also acceptable for the sea bass cultivations and the milkfish. I think already I elaborated this shrimp industry a bit. This is the statistics we are now proudly elaborating everywhere. Last year, 2021, we got a peak production by introducing the venom in a high-tech approach. The closed system recirculation farms are being graded A, and it got some international standard also. Presently, we are farming about 1,700 hectares in Puttalam and 125 Batticaloa and 27 in Mannar. But we have identified and zoned several locations in eastern and the northern region. With the World Bank support, we are doing the zonal mapping. So I think it will be produced within another 2-3 months. It is in the final phase, the zonal mapping. From the north, where we have identified more than 5,000 acres for shrimp farming from 4 different districts, Jaffna, Mannar, Kilinochchi and Mullaitivu. The seaweed cultivation, again, since 2013, we did several research, and now finally we are moving with tissue culture laboratories for seed productions, as well as farming also. These are some pictures taken from the field. And the culture technology, I think it's familiar for everybody. So 2021, we produced about 218 tons and exported 16.5 tons because last year we utilized huge amount of seaweed for our organic fertilizer productions. So it is another requirement from the aquaculture to supply the raw material for organic production, since organic fertilizer production, since we have prohibited the inorganic fertilizer usage. The potential locations are in Jaffna, Kilinochchi, Mannar and Puttalam districts. So the marks are here, earmarked. And the government also willing to have more seaweed investment because it's directly benefiting the coastal community of North, especially the movement engagement will be pretty much higher than the others. And sea cucumber, as I mentioned earlier, the species what we are culturing, Hawthornia scrabba, it's a highly, the export oriented species, as well as the market value of the sea cucumber also very high. And we have, approached several niche markets in Europe and USA also, apart than the Far East countries. The farming technology, already we have well developed farming technology with the zonations and everything. So far, 10 years we completed in our research phase. Now it is in a commercialization phase last 2 years. So it's moving very good. It's also supporting the rural economy in a massive way. And the export earning also, it is providing a good export earning. It is second in Sri Lankan table for the seafood export earning. And huge amount of land we have for the seafood export villages. So the concept which has been conceptualized by the Ministry of Fisheries, similar to a kind of these export zones or industrial zones. The sites are identified in, and the mud crab. So as I mentioned, mud crab of Sri Lanka, it has specified market in Europe, as well as especially in Singapore. You can feel that delicacy of Sri Lankan mud crab. But with the wild collection or wild fisheries, it is also threatened. So now we are planning to move towards farming. So you can't believe simply after 10 months of culture, you can have 1 kilo animal. One animal will become 1 kilo. So that become the price of 1 kilo is in, I think in dollars, more than, I think presently it's more than $60, I think. And dish of mud crab, even in Sri Lanka, there's a specified, restaurant for the mud crab dishes. It is more than, I think, $80, or I think more than $100 a dish. One crab, right? And the farming technology already, well developed here. Since we have, naturally blessed locations with mangrove forests, without damaging mangrove. There's a culture technology called aqua silviculture. Cope up with the environment. We can go for cultivation without any alternation of environment. The sites Jaffna, Kilnochi Manor, Trinco, Batikolo, Putulam, and Goal, Hamandote also. The sea bass, it's also another export commodity. Every year we are exporting cultured sea bass, nearly 500 tons from Trincomalee only. But now there are locations identified in northern region as well as in the other part of Sri Lanka also. After the feasibility studies of 5 years, we are proposing the locations. The breeding technology well developed, and government also working to advance the breeding and nursing technologies. The cage cultures and pond cultures and small holders cage cultures also can be done. The locations which have been already studied and identified. The pictures were taken from Mannar, smallhold farmers. So these are the other species in consideration at Sri Lanka. Still we don't have any farming, but we did the feasibility studies for this species. But we heard from India, the pomfret, Sri bream, cobia is one of the famous species which is being cultivated in India. And Grupo also. And tuna fattening, it's high-tech one, but we hope to do it also in Sri Lanka in near future. Cages also, the ornamental fish, Sri Lanka is one of the biggest export commodity from the freshwater ornamental. So if we have good investment in the ornamental fish, also we're ready to receive it. The earnings charts, you can get it. 2021, we earned about nearly 4 billion, 4.1 billion, 4.2 billion. And marine ornamental fish also, we now recently developed a breeding center for marine ornamental fish with Australian technology. So for the farming practices, if we can have a good investments, we are really appreciate that. And the live rock, similarly, it's also ornamental commodity. The locations now we have identified Trinco and Batikolo for the live rock. 2020, we earned about 2.42 million out of this, but it's a very simple technology and no investment intensive program. The locations Trincomalee, Batikolo, Hambantota and Goal. The mussels in Eastern Province, especially Trinco district, is famous for the green mussels. Already that culture practices in the primitive level, but we have drafted several plans to expand as a commercial level cultivations. So the aquaculture industrial park, this is one of the most prioritized sector or area which has been promoted by government of Sri Lanka as well as Ministry of Fisheries and NAGDA. So as I mentioned already, we have identified more than 4,000 acres in Jaffna and 2,000 acres in Batikolo. The conceptual designs and all the environmental studies are done by NAGDA and the ministry with the support of World Bank. They have given some expert support to done a SCA, because when it comes to aquaculture development, mostly environmental issues were shouted. So we want to mitigate that from the, that issue from, from that burden from the investors, and already we have done the SCA, Strategic Environment Assessment. And the other input supply industries like feed and other machineries also need to be collaborated with these investment plans. Then only we can achieve the holistic development of aquaculture. So this is last year's statistics, how from between 2020 and 2021, we made a change within a year with limited resources what we have during this pandemic period. So I think the hope came from these statistics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. B. Niruparaj. So with that note, ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of the segment 1, where we have the presentations, and hope that you all had a comprehensive session which included some useful and relevant information related to quite a wide range of sectors and opportunities. So thank you very much to all the presenters. As we tender a very special warm welcome to our special invitees and dignitaries gracing this occasion, especially the Honorable Minister of Trade of Sri Lanka, Honorable Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, His Excellency Gopal Bagle, Chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Vish Govindasamy, President of the Indian CEO Forum, Mr. T.S. Prakash, Vice President of the Lanka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. M. Raghuraman, and the Head of the Delegation of the CII, Mr. Sunil Uplab. Welcome, gentlemen, gracing the occasion. And at the same time, we also have with us Mr. Siridimal Pereira, Secretary to the Urban Development, Waste Disposal and Community Cleanliness Ministry. Additional Secretary, Mrs. W.M. Deepthi Fernando. Secretary to the State Ministry of Solar, Wind and Hydropower Generation, Mr. K.H.D.K. Samarkoon. The Chairman of the Urban Development Authority, Major General Retired Udaya Nanakkara, and the Chairman of the Sri Lanka Ports Authority, Mr. Prashant Jayaman. Welcome, gentlemen. And on behalf of the High Commission of India here in Sri Lanka, would like to tender once again a very special warm welcome to Mr. Sanjay Baveja of ONGC Videsh Limited, gracing the occasion. Mr. Manjula De Silva, Secretary General of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Mano Zelvanathan, the Group Director of Constance Cumberbatch PLC, gracing the occasion. Mr. Ajit De Pereira, Secretary General, Chief Executive Officer of the Federation of Commerce and Industry of Sri Lanka. Mr. Shanil Anthony Fernando, Chairman of the International Chamber of Commerce. And Mr. Hemakumar Gunasekara, Secretary General, gracing the occasion. So, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, it gives me pleasure in inviting the following dignitaries to take your respective seats on the main dais. Can we have our chief guest gracing this occasion, Honorable Minister of Trade of Sri Lanka, Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, His Excellency Gopal Bagle, High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, Chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Vish Govindasamy, President of the Indian Chief Executive Officers Forum, Mr. T.S. Prakash, Vice President of the Lanka Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Mr. M. Raghuraman, and the Head of the Delegation of CII, Mr. Sunil Uplab. And at the same time, it gives me great pleasure in inviting the Governor of the Northern Province of Sri Lanka, Honorable Jeevan Tyagaraja, also to join the dignitaries whilst welcoming him to the forum. So we're going to have brief deliberations by the dignitaries at the main dais. So first, would like to call upon ladies and gentlemen to address the gathering and add his brief deliberation. Please welcome the head of the CII business delegation, Mr. Sunil Suresh Uplab.
His Excellency Dr. Bandula Gunawardene, Honorable Minister for Trade, Government of Sri Lanka. His Excellency Mr. Gopal Bagle, Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka. Honorable Governor of the Northern Province, Mr. Jeevan Tyagaraja. Mr. Vish Govindasamy, President of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce and Group Managing Director, Sunshine Holdings. Mr. T.S. Prakash, President of Indian CEO Forum, Sri Lanka. Mr. M. Raghuraman, Vice President of Lanka Chamber of Commerce and Industry and CEO, Brandex Market Watch. Industry colleagues from India and Sri Lanka, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. On behalf of CII, it gives me great pleasure to be present here today in the Emerald Nation and represent a 13-member strong business delegation. I would like to thank the Indian High Commission, Colombo, for organizing this very timely conference focused on enhancing India-Sri Lanka economic relations. I would also like to personally thank the entire team at the Indian High Commission on behalf of my CII colleagues in the delegation for facilitating our meetings and organizing fruitful interactions with various important stakeholders in Colombo over the last 2 days. His Excellency Dr. Bandula Gunawardene, Honorable Minister for Trade, Government of Sri Lanka, we are delighted to have you in our midst today. Indian industry is deeply encouraged with your proactive role in strengthening our economic relationship. His Excellency Mr. Gopal Bagle, Indian High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, on behalf of CII, I would like to thank you for your leadership role, and we are confident that with your guidance, our economic relationship would touch new heights. We are happy to have Mr. Vish Govindaswamy, President of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, and Mr. M. Raghuraman, Vice President of Indo-Lanka Chamber of Commerce, in this August gathering. CII has a very strong partnership with Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. CII had the privilege of working with the Indo-Lanka Chamber under the umbrella of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce for several years. Both CII and Ceylon Chamber of Commerce are playing a catalytic role towards creating a value chain and providing a platform for the private sector of both countries to further deepen their engagement. We are looking forward to many more years of fruitful partnership and collaboration in strengthening Indo-Sri Lanka economic relations in future as well. Mr. T.S. Prakash, President of Indian CEO Forum, Sri Lanka, we look forward to hearing from you the successful stories of Indian companies operating in Sri Lanka. Friends, India and Sri Lanka enjoy a vibrant and growing economic and commercial partnership, which has witnessed considerable expansion over the years. The entry into force of India-Sri Lanka Free Trade Agreement in 2000 contributed significantly towards the expansion of trade between the two countries. Economic ties between the two nations also include a flourishing development partnership that encompasses areas such as infrastructure, connectivity, transportation, housing, health, livelihood and rehabilitation, education, and industrial development. India's partnership with Sri Lanka stands out as a role model in the region for good neighborly relations, and very few countries in the world share such close fraternal ties. Sri Lanka has been accorded the highest priority in India's foreign and external economic framework. Indian industry aligns with this and believes that building mutual stakes in each other's development is the best strategy for closer ties. For this, Indian industry would like to further boost its investments in Sri Lanka. We meet here at a time when both our economies are trying to bounce back after the unfortunate circumstances arising due to the COVID-19 outbreak. With the very successful vaccine rollout, we now see a bright light at the end of the tunnel. We in the Indian industry believe that pandemic such as this only reinforces the need for us to work together and find mutual solutions. Economic cooperation between countries have become all the more important in the context of the still ongoing pandemic. The shared culture and heritage of the people of India and Sri Lanka, coupled with the rapport developed between the country's highest leadership, would be beneficial in the post-pandemic scenario, which has also been reiterated by the leadership of both countries. We feel there are many potential areas of engagement. The need of the hour is for a stable policy environment, liberalization of the parameters of doing business, and encouragement of foreign capital. This would enable both our countries to move forward faster and more inclusive together. Let me highlight a few areas where we can work together. Firstly, infrastructure development. Indian companies should look at opportunities in developing key infrastructure, energy, and transportation projects. It would also look at projects pertaining to building super specialty hospitals by Indian healthcare providers. Secondly, digital economy and e-governance. I believe much was discussed in the earlier presentations as well. Digitization and e-governance could be an important area of cooperation, as it not only promotes technology upgradation, but also generates employment. Improving digital connectivity in Sri Lanka can be the area that Indian companies should look at. This would also be an opportunity for the government to introduce e-government services in order to reduce crowds gathering at many places and minimize face-to-face contact while promoting the overall productivity of the public. Thirdly, tourism. Tourism is one of the worst hit sectors during the last 2 years of the pandemic. Before the outbreak, arrival of Indian tourists in Sri Lanka was increasing every year, and they were the highest spenders, which had a positive impact on the overall Sri Lankan economy. Going forward, as the situation is normalizing, Sri Lanka Tourism Board may organize roadshows in different cities of India. Next, education. An average Sri Lankan spends a substantial amount of their foreign currency for education in Australia, UK, USA, and Malaysia. There is enormous scope for Indian education sector to open up campuses in Sri Lanka, which will also help Sri Lanka in conserving foreign currency reserves. Next is pharmaceuticals. As Sri Lanka is aiming to develop a strong pharma industry that can penetrate the global market, there lies immense opportunity for collaboration with Indian companies. By providing and enabling regulatory framework and infrastructure, Sri Lanka can create the ground conditions necessary to attract Indian pharmaceutical companies. Lastly, textiles. The COVID-19 pandemic has hit Sri Lanka's exports of niche garments to European and US markets. Due to the pandemic, several orders had either been cancelled or affected seriously and has affected the textile sector very badly. Indian companies in this sector can look at collaboration with Sri Lankan counterparts in creating value chains. At present, India-Sri Lanka trade does not commensurate with its potential, and it is imperative for Indian business community to not let go of this golden opportunity and forge strong bonds with their Sri Lankan counterparts. I'm sure that today's conference would provide the perfect blend of opportunities aimed at enriching institutional, corporate, individual investors, and business houses, and act as a networking opportunity for introductions to potential business partners with a view of establishing partnership. Friends, I'm optimistic that in the forthcoming future, India-Sri Lanka economic ties would be stronger than ever before. Let me assure you that the Indian industry will render all possible support to drive the bilateral economic agenda which defines our partnership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The head of the CII business delegation, Mr. Sunil Suresh Uplav, starting the session 2. Next, ladies and gentlemen, gives me pleasure in inviting the Vice President of the Indo-Lanka Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Please welcome Mr. Raghuraman to add his notes to the keynote addresses.
Honorable Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, Minister of Trade, Honorable Jeevan Tyagaraja, Governor Northern Province, His Excellency Gopal Bagle, High Commissioner of India, Mr. Sunil Suresh, Head of the CII Business Delegation, Mr. Vish Govindaswamy, Chairman, Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, distinguished delegates from the Confederation of Indian Industry, and the members from the Indo-Lanka Chamber of Commerce. My fellow speakers, ladies and gentlemen, a warm namaste, Aibon, welcome. The past 2 years has thrown enough of challenges in all aspects of our lives. Businesses to survive had to adapt, innovate, rethink strategies, and collaborate. The Indo-Lanka Chamber of Commerce was set up in 2006 and have constantly been trying to work towards achieving our goal of collaboration, fostering relationships, bringing in various businesses and trade bodies together between India and Sri Lanka. And I would like to acknowledge the Charter President, Mr. Manoj Selvanathan, and past President, Mr. Vish Govindaswamy, along with the committee members for their tireless work and helping us build a strong foundation for the future between our two countries. Having said that, this definitely would not have been even remotely possible without the help, support, drive, and vision from His Excellency Gopal Bagle, Mr. Vinod Jacob, Deputy High Commissioner, and Dr. Rakesh Pandey, Counselor Economic and Commercial, along with their predecessors and their teams from the Indian High Commission in Colombo. Mr. Ramesh David, the current president of the ILCCI, and I would also like to thank various chambers in India, namely Delhi, Pune, Hyderabad, CII, FICCI, ASSOCHAM, and the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce for making these interactions that much more meaningful. Here are some of the key activities we were able to achieve collectively. In July 2019, a high-level delegation attended the outbound trade mission to Delhi in assisting Sri Lankan SMEs to enter the Indian market. In January 2020, a 34-member delegation attended the Indus Food Tech Fair, which was generously sponsored by the Government of India in coordination with the Indian High Commission in Sri Lanka. A webinar on Sri Lanka and India current economy, business environment and opportunities for joint collaborations was held in 15 May 2020 with the help of Associated Chamber of Commerce and Industry along with the Indian High Commission, bringing both business communities together. The first ever virtual B2B meetings with Cosmos International was held from the 30th June, 31st July 2020, whereby we had a representation of 24 Sri Lankan companies. A virtual B2B meeting was set up with chamber members from Delhi, Pune, Hyderabad, and CII on the 21st July 2020, covering a wide range of sectors such as agriculture and food processing, including machinery, healthcare, pharmaceuticals, furniture, paper, electronics, packaging, and engineering goods. On the 29th September, a webinar was held on India, Sri Lanka current business environment and opportunities for joint collaboration in the agri and food sectors. A virtual B2B meeting with the high-end Indian supermarkets was held on the 11th February 2021 to promote and diversify Sri Lankan's agri-products in India. And last March, a digital conference was held focusing on enhancing India-Sri Lanka economic relations. The best example I can give from a personal point of view is in regards of Brandix India Apparel City, which was set up in 2008. A 1,000-acre integrated apparel city based near Vizag, offering end-to-end solutions. Today, as we speak, they employ over 21,000 associates, trained over 65,000 people, with an annual turnover of $350 million, and are the largest intimate apparel exporters to the EU, US, and the UK. This again was only possible with the support, collaboration, and guidance with the various government agencies in Delhi, Andhra Pradesh, and the unstinted support from the Indian High Commission in Colombo, whereby we were able to overcome any challenge which came our way. Once again, Your Excellency, a sincere thanks to you and your team, along with the various chambers in India and CII, for working closely with us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Vice President of the Indo-Lanka Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the President of Indian CEO Forum for Sri Lanka, Mr. T.S. Prakash, to add his deliberations.
A warm good evening to all. Minister of Trade, Honorable Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, Honorable Governor of Western Province, Jeevan Tyagaraja, His Excellency Gopal Bagle, High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka, President of Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Head of Business Delegation of Confederation of Indian Industry, Vice President of the Indo-Lanka Chamber of Commerce, other distinguished invitees and guests. I am extremely honored to address this distinguished gathering on behalf of the Indian CEO Forum, Sri Lanka, as the President. I am overwhelmed to see the multiple presentations which helps India-Sri Lanka partnership for sustained growth, and many congratulations to everyone for this wonderfully prepared presentations. To introduce the Indian CEO Forum Sri Lanka, it is the foremost body of Indian investment in Sri Lanka, representing some of the country's oldest and longest foreign direct investment, and Indian professionals heading large companies and making a significant contribution to the local economy. The objective of the Indian CEO Forum is to promote and contribute to the economic growth of Sri Lanka through Indian investment and safeguard the Indian industries. And to the industries, the Indian CEO Forum also seek to support, advise, and assist the Sri Lankan entrepreneurs seeking to establish themselves in India to make sure the two countries benefit by enhancing the natural synergies between them. Indian CEO Forum encourages Indian companies to invest in various sectors in Sri Lanka and can play a significant role in assisting and guiding these companies to be successful in Sri Lanka from our own experience. Indian CEO Forum is having a membership of 62 companies of 35 Indian investments which have secured employment to large segment either directly or indirectly. In order to sustain this, Indian CEO Forum has formulated a project called Shine Lanka. In collaboration with KPMG, the High Commission of India to Sri Lanka, and High Commission of Sri Lanka to India. Due to the pandemic, the project was inevitably put on hold. Now we are in the process of revamping the operations. Even the Sri Lankan High Commission in India is excited to see the project shape up. I would like to take this opportunity to highlight the importance of economic and technology cooperation agreement between Sri Lanka and India. To further broaden the scope of FTA and to strengthen the economic trade, investment, and technology cooperation between India and Sri Lanka, ECTA has proposed and negotiations were conducted. ECTA cover both goods and services. To my understanding, 11 rounds of negotiations have been completed so far. Since Sri Lanka is unfortunately undergoing a difficult patch right now, we are hoping that by signing this partnership, we will further strengthen the economic engagement for both India and Sri Lanka. So I would request once again to the Honorable Minister and His Excellency to look forward for this ETCA. If it is happening, it's a turning point for us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. The President of the Indian CEO Forum, Sri Lanka, Mr. T.S. Prakash. Next, ladies and gentlemen, gives me great pleasure in inviting the Chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Please welcome Mr. Vish Govindasamy.
Ayubowan, Namaskar. Honorable Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, Minister of Trade, Honorable Jeevan Tyagaraja, Governor of the Northern Province, His Excellency Gopal Bagle, High Commissioner for India in Sri Lanka, Mr. Sunil Suresh Uplap, Leader of the Mission representing the delegation of the CII, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, at the outset, behalf of the people of Sri Lanka, this evening I would like to thank the people of India, His Excellency Prime Minister Sri Narendra Modi, External Affairs Minister Honorable Dr. Jaishankar, and High Commissioner Gopal Bagle for having considered the urgent need of the people of Sri Lanka and assisting the government of Sri Lanka in this very difficult economic period that we are facing. Your assistance with the line of credit of US $1 billion, $500 million worth of fuel purchase, and the deferment of the ACU payment of US $500 million, and the currency swap of US $400 million for a total of US billion 2.4. Thank you very much, India. Thank you very much, people of India. The relationship between our countries has always strengthened year on year. The Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, of course, is generally focused on our bilateral trade between our two nations. We have improved the frequency and the content of our trade related activities to reflect this interaction between Sri Lanka and India. As per the latest statistics, ladies and gentlemen, our total bilateral trade between our countries accounted for over US $5.2 billion in 2021, which is an increase compared to the earlier performance of 2020. Even though there were many challenges during this period in time due to the COVID-related developments, both countries were severely impacted by the pandemic. We are glad to note the increased trade during 2021 and our balance in trade in favor of India close to $3.6 billion to Sri Lanka. While the trade balance favors India, exports from Sri Lanka to India have risen from US $600 million in 2020 to close to $800 million in 2021. Amongst the total exports to India from Sri Lanka, coffee, tea, and spices accounted for over 16%, followed by food waste residuals, animal feed, edible fruits and nuts, animal or vegetable fats, and oil fats are the main items that was exported. Mineral fuels, followed by iron and steel and knitted fabrics, were the main import items from India to Sri Lanka in 2021. Looking at the historical import numbers of Sri Lanka, the second largest import from India was motor vehicles. Unfortunately, due to the current crisis, this has been temporarily put on hold by the government of Sri Lanka, and I'm told the government will look at it favorably as the economic situation improves. India was one of the top international tourist generating market for Sri Lanka during 2021, and 42% of the total tourists arrived in Sri Lanka from India. During 2021, we had over 50,000 tourists who arrived in Sri Lanka, which was a 37% decline, and we all know the reasons for this decline. India is also recognized as a key investment partner, as my predecessor spoke recently, and we have established business presence in Sri Lanka through investment linkages. As you may be aware, that during the visit of the Foreign Secretary of India, Sri Harshvardhan Shringla, to Sri Lanka in October 2021, it was emphasized to continue the current momentum of deep engagement that reflects readiness to bring prosperity to people of both countries. Most importantly, bringing the Indian businesses to invest in economic zones, especially the pharmaceutical manufacturing and the IT sectors in Sri Lanka, which was demonstrated here by our Executive Director of the Board of Investments. So, dear friends from India who are visiting here, it is now opportune time for more investments from India to Sri Lanka. There are many investment opportunities, as you have already heard this afternoon, in many of the sectors, including IT-enabled services, logistics, leisure, food processing, and on and on. There are many, many opportunities, and we welcome you to invest in Sri Lanka. In addition to the logistics sector, Sri Lanka is considered the gateway to India, the largest economy in the region, which has been experiencing sustained growth spurt, which also we heard through the various speakers this afternoon. It is also considered as a vital transshipment hub based in the strategic location on the key east-west trade route. Sri Lanka is keen to attract investments in the integrated logistics and high value-added services to the international trading transportation companies. You've also heard from our startup chamber this afternoon. I believe the Startup Conference Sri Lanka 2022, organized by the Council for Startups of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, is scheduled to be held in May of 2022 to facilitate the invaluable opportunities in the startup industry. We heard from both startups from India and Sri Lanka. So again, we cordially invite a CII delegation to visit during this time. We are very appreciative and thank the High Commission of India in Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka High Commission in New Delhi, and the CII who keenly engaged and fully supported all our activities. We are determined to increase bilateral trade, investment, and tourism between our two countries, and to continue the exchange of business delegations that would assist to tap the untapped potential in both countries. In conclusion, a special thank you to all the delegates who have taken your valuable time to visit our beautiful country and also assist us in this crucial time. Thank you for your presence today, and we look forward to positive interaction between our two countries by delegates of this nature. Please stay safe, and best wishes to all of you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, the Chairman of the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Vish Govindasamy. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Governor of the Northern Province, Honorable Jeevan Tyagaraja, to add your brief notes to the keynote addresses.
The Honorable Senior Minister, Minister of Trade, Dr. Bandulu Gunawardena, and the distinguished members on the stage this evening, representing the organizers. Thank you very much for the opportunity as well as the event that has been put together today. I was very impressed, and I was listening very carefully to some of the presentations from India, and clearly we have enormous amount of knowledge that we can pick up from the different models of development in the states of India. And certainly we would look to pick up on some of them for our own benefit. I'm aware that I'm coming at the end of the evening, so I'd rather not speak for very long, except to add to all what's been said so far, endorse the sentiments expressed, as well as the points that have been made out of Sri Lanka by way of an invitation to Indian corporates. So just to add on to what's been said, from the Northern Province, what I'd like to mention right at the beginning is that the relations between Center Province and the mechanism that we employ in government is, I want to emphasize, is seamless. There is absolutely no distinction whatsoever. We work seamlessly, and this was also seen with the recent visit of the Honorable Prime Minister, the Honorable Minister of Trade himself, and several ministers who've been in and out of the Northern Province in the recent past. Just on the statistics, 1.26 million here, but what we need to recognize is an enormous talent pool of Sri Lankans overseas, skilled, experienced, resourced, and available. So that's a huge potential of people of Sri Lankan origin overseas who can come online. We had 22% of the coastline as far as the north is concerned, but also the much bigger line, and which is presented in the Aqua presentation. The north has 51% forest cover, and we are going to go green. It will be a green province. We will be exporting green, and we are likely to have excess of green, which has potential to go across the seas. I don't need to mention, it is clearly evident in the recent agreement signed about 10 days back, and we are obviously going to see much more. We need to be facilitating the traffic, the connectivity. We've got the airport, which is going to start again. We have further anchorage facilities, so I don't want to overstate the points that we've got. So we certainly have anchorage facilities which we can use. We can also, I think, resume some of the manner in which we travel between the two countries, and I think that's being looked at as well. From the province, between the north as well as the north central province, we are kind of powering up together. North will be using a lot of technology. We're going to be dashboard driven, digital driven in the way we do business. Furthermore, in terms of investments, apart from the renewable energy side, we are going to be opening up in a manner that has not been seen before for the leisure sector. So I like to sort of leave it that in a very general sort of way, but I can assure you it's going to be slightly different from what you've seen in the past. We've also got quite a few natural assets, slightly small and mid-size. That's natural islands off the northern coast. So those are all going to be opening up for business sometime in the near future. We're really looking at a jump in the next 24 months. But 2 months of the 24 has already begun, and we're working hard on that. This afternoon, we had another meeting with the Honorable Trade Minister. He was in Jaffna previously, as I said. He started something in 2014. We have resumed that policy of his, and that should unleash the IT potential. The distinguished presentation from India, from the computer side, spoke about the potential. I don't want to overstate the statistics, but I can only say that we are about to unleash the IT potential with the policy that the Honorable Minister had started in 2014, and he's picking up where he left off now, this year, very soon. We're looking for, India is our nearest market, there's no doubt about it. So it does make sense that we should be working with our market. I hope that we could be adding value to the services, and we could be an extension to some of the corporate activities out in India. That, as well as the fact that we can offer, business wants stability, assurances. The BOI presentation spoke about the benefits. We're also looking to commensurate and reciprocate the privileges that investments want. So we've been looking at some expansive options, instruments, and vehicles to do that. And we are open for business. This will be, we've got 9 provinces in the country. The others have been at work before. The North is coming online right now. So this event today is coming at a good time. We've had conversations with the CEO Forum before, and we are privileged to be part of the discussions today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Governor of the Northern Province, Jeevan Tyagaraja. Ladies and gentlemen, time to call upon the host to add his well wishes and, of course, the notes here at these keynote addresses. Please welcome His Excellency Gopal Bagle, the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka.
The chief guest of this event today, Honorable Trade Minister of Sri Lanka, Dr. Bandula Gunawardena, who is not only a veteran politician and a trade minister, but also, if I may, Excellency, with your permission, say that a multifaceted, talented personality, an artist, a filmmaker in his own right. Honorable Governor of the Northern Province, Thiru Jeevan Tyagaraja, senior officials from the government of Sri Lanka, captains of Sri Lankan and Indian trade and industry, and among them on the dais, my friends Vish, Prakash, Raghu, and of course the leader of the CII delegation, Stralup, and of course our guests from India who have joined us here. Ayubovan, Namaskar, Vanakkam, Salam Alaikum, very good evening to all of you. I would first of all like to very sincerely thank our chief guest today for his gracious presence and his guidance and his cooperation, his unstinted support to not only India-Sri Lanka relationship, but also to this very important dimension of this relationship, which is our economic partnership between India and Sri Lanka. I would also like to thank the Honorable Governor of Northern Province, who at a very short notice not only consented to grace this event with his presence, but also has been very actively taking notes and making suggestions. And I'm sure with his background and with his expertise, he will provide much valuable guidance and cooperation and input into taking forward many of the initiatives and ideas which have emerged during today's interaction. On behalf of the High Commission of India, I would like to welcome all of you to this event. To my mind, this is, if not the first, this is the first such event which we are organizing in physical form. Of course, many of our participants have joined from India virtually, but after the restrictions of COVID are more or less now behind us, this is, I think, the first such event, or one of the first such events that we have organized, if not the first. What it signifies to us today is the indomitable spirit of India and Sri Lanka to come together and face challenges, and not only face challenges, but through their cooperation and their togetherness, overcome them. Overcome them for each other, overcome them for mutual benefit, overcome them for the prosperity and progress of their people. I very sincerely appreciate what Vish mentioned from the rostrum about the support extended by India to Sri Lanka recently. And in that context, and also which I was in any case planning to say, I would like to make 4 or 5 points. First of all, why this support? And for that, I have to go back to the very essence of India-Sri Lanka relationship. Geographical proximity, yes. Civilizational commonality, yes. Spiritual share, spiritual connect, of course. Economic logic, most certainly. But there is something else also, ladies and gentlemen, which binds us together in the pursuit of progress, in the pursuit of peace, in the pursuit of well-being of our people, in the pursuit of making this relationship even stronger, for which the vision of our leaders of our Prime Minister in India and leader of Honorable President and Honorable Prime Minister of Sri Lanka are the guiding force. Their vision is the inspiration. And what is that central theme? That central theme, you might have heard, lies in 2 or 3 phrases in India's foreign policy. First is the philosophical tenet, which has been with us for thousands of years, and that is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. The whole world is but one family. And within that family, who comes first? Neighborhood. Neighborhood first is the second pillar of our foreign policy. And Sri Lanka happens to be at the confluence of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, neighborhood first, and wait, one more tenet, which was propounded by Prime Minister Shri Modi at Mauritius in 2015, and that's the concept or the doctrine of SAGAR, S-A-G-A-R, which means security and growth for all in the region. Region meaning Indian Ocean region. So this is the importance of India-Sri Lanka relationship, not only in terms of geography and history and philosophy and civilization and economic logic, but purely in terms of the preference that we attach to our relationship with Sri Lanka. It lies, as I said, at the confluence of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, of neighborhood first, and Sagar. And this is the reason why I have verbalized this, but many of those who do not verbalize it also live it every day, in the form of our civilization commonality, in the form of our culture, in the form of the languages we speak, in the form we just look alike, talk alike, mostly we see the same films or similar films and eat the same or similar food. So, ladies and gentlemen, it is natural that as India celebrated Holi this month, and as our brothers and sisters are going to mark New Year in the coming month, whether it is Avrudu or Puthandu, it is but natural for the people of India to stand with the people of Sri Lanka. And I do hope that the support that we have been able to extend would contribute towards the people of Sri Lanka, our brothers and sisters in Sri Lanka, welcoming their new year with more hope and more happiness. The second point I want to make, of course, Vish mentioned about the rise in bilateral trade. In business, the most important thing is trust. Why, when the whole world was looking at COVID and wondering what to do with it, how is it? How do you explain that not only bilateral trade between India and Sri Lanka has grown, but also investment from India into Sri Lanka in key sectors have come about and is still growing? To my mind, as a practicing diplomat, this is possible because the traders, the businessmen, the investors, they know each other. They work with each other. They have this experience, this thing which nothing else can replace or substitute for, and it is the trust and confidence in each other. So this is why when rest of the companies were wondering from many parts of the world whether to come into Sri Lanka or not, and this particular case was mentioned by one of the presenters here, one particular Indian IT company came and created more than 1,000 jobs for talented Sri Lankan youth in a matter of less than 1 year. So ladies and gentlemen, this proximity, this familiarity, this trust and confidence in each other is something which we in the High Commission want to even grow further, and we are very happy that we are in our own small way able to contribute to it. The third point I wanted to make was, while doing this, we are very conscious of the requirements of the people of Sri Lanka. Our entire development cooperation in Sri Lanka, which tops over $3.5 billion, is requirement-driven, is demand-driven, and is oriented to fulfilling the needs of our friendly people in Sri Lanka. And I would just give you 2 examples. As we speak today, a few minutes ago, I understand a solemn ceremony has taken place in Temple Trees to mark what is today, 22nd March, the World Water Day. And one project which has been inaugurated there has been carried out in Sri Lanka with the Government of India's assistance and an Indian company providing the technical expertise. And that water project is a big project, but its size and scale is not important. What is important is that it has rid the people of the salinity of water by converting into sweetness. I think today it is a very apt metaphor for the change that Indian cooperation with Sri Lanka can bring into the lives of the people of Sri Lanka as a change. We see today a lot of discussions about fuel, about climate change, about the impact of fossil fuel and the need to reduce dependence on coal and fossil fuel oil. That is why we have decided to put a lot of emphasis on bringing Indian investment into the field of renewable energy. As you would already know, I'm very happy to share that a few days ago, a very prominent Indian public sector company, NTPC, signed a project joint venture shareholder agreement with its partner, Ceylon Electricity Board, for the construction of a solar power plant in Sampur. This again, like water is a priority sector for the government of people of Sri Lanka, renewable energy is also a priority sector for the people and the government of Sri Lanka. So ladies and gentlemen, I would not take more of your time. I would just like to emphasize once again that the commercial cooperation, the economic partnership, the trade and investment relations between India and Sri Lanka, of course, correspond to our great proximity and close and friendly relations which have developed, which have emerged, which have transformed, which have nourished each other for thousands of years, but they also correspond to the needs that we have today, the challenges that we face today collectively together in this world. And ladies and gentlemen, with these few words, I would like to once again thank you for your presence. Thank you for your presence here today and your patience. And I would like to wish CII many more visits to Sri Lanka, not only the colleagues who are here with us today, but their other colleagues also should travel to Sri Lanka, see here, come here, and avail of the opportunities. Some of them have been mentioned here. There was perhaps not enough time to mention some others, but from the High Commission, we would be very happy to work with you, work with our friends in the industry and in the government of Sri Lanka to further strengthen this very important economic partnership. And as I step down and I say this, I cannot forget to note that it's not only CII delegation or delegations of this type which are visiting from India, the shores of Sri Lanka. Few minutes before I came to this place, I received a piece of statistics which mentions that from the 1st to 20th of March, the international tourist arrival in Sri Lanka was the largest from India, over 15,000 people. No surprise again. But what surprised me, but the number from India was more than the next two ranks put together. That is number 1, which is India, was more than number 2 and number 3 put together. So this again is a proof of, if any is needed, of the advantage of not only geographical proximity, but also familiarity. And also connectivity that we wish to promote in every which possible way, creating more air links, perhaps someday soon being able to resume ferry services between our two countries, promoting religious pilgrimages in either direction. So people-to-people ties, which form the core, which form the soul of this relationship, are also a very important area of focus. So I see the visit of the CII delegation not merely an exercise in commerce or trade and investment or economic diplomacy, but also an exercise as building people-to-people relationship. So thank you very much for coming here. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to host you. And once again, I thank all the audience and most of all, our distinguished panelists and my guests at this stage. Thank you very much. Bahuma Stuti, Nandri, Dhanyavad.
Thank you very much, His Excellency Gopal Bagle, the High Commissioner of India to Sri Lanka. One final remarks before we conclude the formalities, ladies and gentlemen. Please welcome our chief guest, gracing this occasion, Honorable Minister of Trade of the Government of Sri Lanka, Dr. Bandula Gunawardena.
Ayubowan, Namaste, Vanakkam, Assalamu alaikum. Excellency, the High Commissioner of India, Honorable Governor of Northern Province, Mr. Tyagaraja, distinguished delegates from chambers, corporate captains and leaders of industry both from India and Sri Lanka, distinguished academies, ladies and gentlemen, I was much honored and delighted when Excellency High Commissioner Gopal Bagle extended me an invitation to grace and address this high-profile business event titled India-Sri Lanka Friendship for Sustained Growth. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, all of us are well aware of the close relationship that Sri Lanka has with India. Not during the last several decades or centuries, but for millennia. I am also certain that this exclusive relationship would continue, thus further strengthening, deepening, and elevating the bilateral relations with the passage of time. I wish to take this opportunity to sincerely express gratitude to India on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka for extending generous and most needed line of credit and other financial assistance to Sri Lanka at these highly testing and turning times. Excellencies, I would be remiss if I do not highlight the assistance, cooperation, facilitation, and aid and grants India has extended to Sri Lanka during the past. Particularly during the COVID-19 pandemic and current economic challenges of the country, amongst others. I take this opportunity on behalf of the government of Sri Lanka to place on record the unstinting and unconditional gratitude and gratefulness of government of the people of Sri Lanka to India. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, on a separate note, His Excellency Prime Minister of India had highlighted the central and pivotal role that Sri Lanka occupies in India's policy, titled the Neighborhood First Doctrine. In this policy, the SAGA, which stands for security and growth for all the region, would be most helpful and beneficial to Sri Lanka and India. Would continue to stand with the friendly people of Sri Lanka. Of course, India has demonstrated, manifested this sentiment both at most testing time and at best times with Sri Lanka. Given this strategic and enviable location of Sri Lanka, India could use Sri Lanka as a geo-economic and geo-strategic location to advance India's interest, which in turn would advance Sri Lanka's interest as well, thus sustaining economic growth. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, today, India is the fifth largest economy in the world, with a nominal GDP of US dollar 3.2 trillion and having the second largest population in the world. It is predicted by political economists that India would become the second largest economy within next decade, thus becoming an economic, commercial, and trading and investment powerhouse of global scale. On behalf of the government of Sri Lanka, I wish to impress and emphasize that a strong and robust and quoted as a notable FTA between the two countries. I may further add that the export of Sri Lanka to India in 2000 was around US dollar 47 million, and today it is in the vicinity of US dollar 700 million. This was an increase of well over 15 times. On the same note, the imports from India to Sri Lanka has increased dramatically, thus making India the second largest import market of Sri Lanka. I am most pleased and heartened to state as the Minister of Trade that today India is as an economic and investment behemoth that Sri Lanka need to be engaged and associated economically and commercially as much as possible to attend and advance our partnership for sustained economic growth. Lastly, but not least, most political economists state that the epicenter of growth in undoubtedly moving forward. I wish to India-Sri Lanka friendship will move success every time. Always we are with India, our neighborhood country. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, the Honourable Minister of Trade of Sri Lanka, Honourable Dr. Banduru Gunawardena, adding the well wishes and notes. So with that note, ladies and gentlemen, we wrap up the formalities. But before we do so, would like to call upon the members of the CII delegation gracing this occasion to come and stand in front of our main dais so that our Sri Lankan business community will have a better look at all of you. So identify, we have the head of the delegate, Mr. Sunil Suresh Uplab, the Managing Director of the Shubham Aqualink India Private Limited. Gentlemen, if you can stand in front of the main dais, please. Yes. Mr. Shubi Koshi George, the Managing Director of Welcome Hotels Lanka Private Limited. Mr. Manoj Kumar Singh, Regional Head, Group Business Development of the Shapuji Palanji and Company Private Limited.